Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to council facilities officer for May 6th. It's 9 o'clock down to work. So, we need a motion to accept the agenda, moved by Bill, second by Buchner. I wonder if we can add, a delegation, I think by Marie Russell. I'm sure Marie's not here yet, but, she's asked to have a delegation, so, following the other delegations. Okay, move for second, or okay with the amendment? Any further amendments or additions to the agenda? Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's great. Any declaration of continuation from general nature thereof? Being none, we'll go right on to the minutes of the April 15th meeting. Your mover and seconder, moved by Pickard, second by any errors or omissions? Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. This is rising from the minutes, CL 24/2025. Anything you wanted to add?
I don't have anything to add unless there's any questions.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, we are moving to seconder. Moved by Ways, seconded by Thurston. Result of council township surplus office, student report CL 2024/2025, summary about staff action related to business rising from the minutes of April 15th, 2025 information. No further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's great. Now move on to committee of adjustment. We need a motion. I expect committee of adjustment moved by Gillis, second by Buchner. The council will move into the committee of adjustment. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's great. So, call the meeting of the committee of adjustment to order. Motion to accept the agenda, moved by Ways, second by Gibson. Any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's great. Any declaration of continuing interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, move right on to the minutes of the March 18th meeting, moved by Gibson, second by Gillis. Any errors or omissions in that minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The first application for a minor variance for Wilsonian Cattle Inc. Please Overzet. And Casey, you want to come up to the table there? The process, the Laurel planner will go through the application and explain it all. Council will have a chance to ask any questions of Laurel for clarification. Then you have an opportunity to make any comments you want, and go to the public if anyone wants to speak in favor or opposed. And then council will deliberate and eventually make, committee will deliberate and eventually make a decision. So, Laurel, if you would, please.
Great, thank you. Mayor Mayberry, members of council, staff, members of the audience. This is minor variance A0325S with Wilsonian Cattle. The applicants are proposing relief from section 8.2.1, the minimum distance separation requirements for livestock barns and structures. They are proposing to reduce the MDS2 requirement to the nearest type A sensitive land use from 452 meters or 1,483 feet to 267 meters or 876 feet. There is a map up on the screen to provide context. And the purpose is to provide, to be able to construct a new livestock barn. The new barn, you can see it on the diagram up there, is proposed to be located south of the existing dwelling, existing beef barn, existing North Pit, and the approved commodity barn. The new barn would be connected to the existing barn via a walkway and within the vicinity of the other agricultural structures and infrastructures on the property. The property is located on the southwest corner of Curry Road and Jordan Line and surrounded by predominantly agricultural uses. There are two residential existing lot RE properties just adjacent beside the property. They're noted on the map there on Curry Road, and a single residential existing property further to the west, also on Curry Road. The subject property is zoned general agricultural zone and designated agricultural reserve. As part of the circulation, there were no concerns raised by staff or other agencies. The Township of Southwest Oxford Superintendent did notice that this site is located on a seasonal weight restricted road, and that the livestock trucks used to ship cattle from the site are not exempt during the weight restricted season, and this information was shared with the applicant. Public notice was provided to surrounding owners on March 31st. Staff did not receive any comments or questions. So the minimum distance separation, or MDS guidelines, are established by the province, and it's a way to allow municipalities to reduce and minimize conflicts and minimize nuisance complaints associated with livestock facilities, like odor. The required setback is calculated by taking the type of livestock being housed, the number of livestock being housed, and the type of manure storage being used into consideration. In this instance, based on the nutrient management strategy submitted by the applicant, the required MDS setback between the new barn and the type A land use, so the residential property on Kearney Road, is 452 meters. The proposed setback is 267 meters, which represents a reduction of approximately 41%. Our official plan does contain policies about minimizing conflict between ag uses, and the zoning bylaw contains provisions for locating livestock barns and manure storage on properties, and between the livestock facility and other sensitive land uses. So this is what I looked at in order to analyze this application. So minor relief from MDS may be considered to facilitate the development of existing agricultural uses. In this case, the applicant has indicated that the proposed location for the new barn is preferred for a number of reasons. Firstly, it will be close to the existing farm buildings, which supports operational efficiency. Second, moving it further south on the property would result in the removal of additional viable farmland. And thirdly, the location of the Gamsby drain, the municipal drain, does limit the location. The MDS guidelines provide two main points for municipalities to consider regarding minor variances for reducing setbacks. Reductions can be considered and may be appropriate in some circumstances to address issues related to the expansion of existing agricultural uses and operations. And the type of setback reductions can be considered and may be appropriate when they attempt to reduce potential odor conflicts while balancing other potential concerns. So 41% increase from the required setback may appear to be outside the scope of what we would consider minor. However, staff are of the opinion that in this specific situation, a variance is warranted for a number of reasons. The uses are predominantly agricultural, and from an environmental perspective, it does not appear that there's a history of issues or nuisance complaints at all, or that the proposed barn would have any adverse environmental impacts on the property or surrounding properties. The new barn will be the second livestock barn on the property and will result in the expansion and supporting an existing agricultural operation. Although the relief is a reduction to the MDS setback, the required manure storage will be covered and underneath the barn. This method of storage is identified in the MDS guidelines as having very low odor potential, so not creating nuisance. Finally, the proposal can be considered desirable development for the property, as it would result in the expansion of the existing agricultural business, and the location will contribute to operational efficiency. Although alternative locations would remove agricultural lands from production and not support the efficiency of the farm to the same extent. Therefore, it's the opinion of this office that the requested relief is minor and does maintain the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and can be given favorable consideration by this committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurel. Any questions from the committee for the planner? Being none, for the proponent, the applicant, go ahead, Case, any comments you want to make?
No, I think that was explained very well.
Are you satisfied with the recommendation in the report?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone in the public want to speak to this application? In favor or opposed? Being no one, come back to the committee. Any questions or comments from the committee? Councillor Buckner, you're first.
Reading through this, it's doesn't strike me as being a minor variance at 41% reduction in the distance. I'm just wondering why the size of 3,000 beef feeders a barn that big, if you shorten the barn up and go to a little lesser amount, I might feel more inclined to approve this.
Go ahead.
Why makes, well, even if we made the barn 150 feet shorter, I think we're still, way too close to, the residences over there, and, the efficiency or the, what would you say? This size barn works with, the projected income from that, like, making barn smaller, less income makes it harder to justify the barn.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor, sorry, Pickard, senior moment, sorry.
Yeah, I'm wondering about your nutrient management plan. I see it's not approved yet, or at least still.
It is approved now.
It is approved?
Yeah, all the manure is, solid manure, it's a back barn inside, and all the manure is shipped out. Like, it's all sold. It's not being used on the farm itself. We have a broker, MB that are picking it up, so, and then they use it in ginseng and all those, crops, on the sand grounds more.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Yedlin.
I was a little bit concerned about the proximity to the house on Curry Road, but predominant wind flow is from that direction over top of the barn, sending any potential flies or dust or smell concerns further west rather than towards that house for the most part. So I'm okay with it.
Okay. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, Adam.
Thank you. Just wanted to comment on your latest, you were saying about your shipping manure now.
Yeah,
That has the same stipulations on the weight restriction. You cannot ship your weight restriction.
no, there is a, temporary manure storage for 2 or 3 months inside the barn.
Right. Okay.
So,
Just wanted to make that,
Yeah.
know that we're.
yeah, I know we're already,
Okay, anything else? Counselor Wade.
I have a question. You say this is a pack barn,
yeah.
but it says in the report that there's a tank up for storage under the barn?
I don't know, yeah, I'm not, maybe
That
I
just
missed that.
confuses me whether it's a pack barn or liquid manure.
I
No.
apologize, that would be my error.
Oh, that's fine, but in the back of the barn is 60 foot, and that's on the west side, is designed as it's all concrete, and that's where the manure will be stored temporarily till the
Okay.
trucks come and pick it up, so there's
Okay.
not a slab barn.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Gerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you define temporary? How long would it be there?
Well, it's long enough for the weight restriction, like 2 months at the most. And normally they pick it up once a month or whatever, it's a, like real short-term storage. And if the weather or like the weight restrictions, don't permit, then they would. That gives us a little bit of leeway when we clean the barn out, so that it is stored inside, away from the elements. So there's no runoff or anything.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Doing none, then, somebody prepare to make a decision. Counselor Yedlin.
Move to approve.
Move to approve, Counselor Wade, you're seconding that.
Yeah.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. So that's, that decision, appeal period,
We'll send notice out tomorrow, and then there's still 20 days. That is. There's a 20-day.
Yeah. okay. In which case after that, if there's no appeal, you're able to come into the building official and they will help you with the permit. Okay? Right, thank you very much, Kate. Next, we have, my own developments, Brian Grady. Brian, come on up, start the process, same thing for you.
Thanks.
Laurel. We're there, you saw the process, same deal, Brian, Laurel, go ahead with the presentation.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Mayberry, members of council, staff, and members of the audience. This is minor variance A0425S, Mount Elgin Developments. The applicant is proposing relief from 3 provisions of the zoning bylaw for lots 12 to 32 of the draft approved subdivision to essentially to provide the opportunity to construct single detached dwellings consistent in size with the other dwellings anticipated for the subdivision. So the 3 provisions are to increase the maximum permitted lot coverage from a max of 30 to 45%. To reduce the minimum rear yard depth from 7.5 meters or 24.6 feet to 6 meters, which is almost 20 feet. Reduce the minimum exterior side yard width from 10 meters, 32.8 feet to 4.5 meters, 14.7 feet for lots 12, 22, 23, and 32. This application pertains to lots 12 to 32, the draft plan subdivision 2111-4. The property is zoned, or these lots are zoned special residential type 1 holding zone and designated low density residential in the village of Mount Elgin land use plan. From the circulation, there were no concerns with increasing the maximum lot coverage, decrease rear yard depth or exterior side yard width for lots 12 to 31. Township staff and the township engineering consultant provided comments that the approved lot grading for all lots should be maintained. Through circulation and discussion, staff, and this was discussed with the applicant and township staff, planning staff, that lot 32 is irregular in shape and adjacent to a future roundabout. Township staff, planning staff, and the township engineering consultant did identify concerns with providing any relief for lot 32 at this point in the development of the subdivision. We did discuss this with the owner, who agreed that prior to considering relief for lot 32 only, a site-specific plan should be presented with respect to this application, and that lot 32 is removed from this minor variance application, and the owner did agree with this approach. So we did provide notice to surrounding property owners on March 31st. We did not receive any comments. In terms of the analysis of these requested variances, in terms of the proposed increased lot coverage, the applicant did submit a letter from the project engineering firm stating that the requested increase to 45% lot coverage can be accommodated within the development's proposed stormwater management infrastructure. The township's engineering consultant did not identify any concerns regarding the proposed increase to the lot coverage. With respect to the potential impact of future accessory buildings on the rear yards of these lots, we did have a discussion with building and other staff at the township. And I'd like to note that the subdivision agreement for the subdivision would include finalized engineering plans, including grading. And there is also language that would prohibit the overall approved grading from being modified. So the approved engineering plans will also ensure that the drainage of these lots will travel from the back of the lot to the front and eliminate reliance on the rear yard swales. So there is a mechanism to ensure that there will not be, hopefully not be, any issues from people erecting accessory structures in their backyards with this increased lot coverage. With respect to the proposed reduction to the minimum rear yard depth from 7.5 meters to 6 meters, or 24.6 feet to almost 20 feet, we're of the opinion that the reduced rear yard depth will still provide area for amenity space, drainage, and access. Furthermore, a 6-meter rear yard depth will also provide for adequate privacy and compatibility with adjacent leases. With respect to the reduction of the minimum exterior side yard width from 10 meters, so 32.8 feet, to 4.5 meters or 14.7 feet. Again, this is only now applying to lots 12, 22, and 23. Lot 32 has been taken out of the equation. I'd like to note that the exterior side yards for these lots were never intended to be for access points, driveways, or for vehicular parking. Vehicular access and parking will still be from the front of the lots. We are of the opinion that the proposed reduction to the exterior side yard width will continue to provide sufficient area for access, for drainage and for maintenance, and not result in any unsafe conditions or poor sightlines. I'd also like to know that lots 32 and 23 are adjacent to a public park and that there's a public sidewalk on the west side of Fewster Street, providing for safe pedestrian access through the southern end. And the township's engineering consultant did not identify any concerns with reducing side yard exterior width for these 3 lots. So in terms of my recommendation, staff is of the opinion that the increased maximum lot coverage, reduced rear yard depth, and reduced exterior side yard depth for lots 12 to 31 will provide sufficient area for amenity space, drainage access, and provide for adequate privacy and compatibility with adjacent lots. I am satisfied that this proposed relief will have minimal impact on surrounding properties in terms of compatibility and form, will not interfere with the normal and expected use of the nearby properties. It's the opinion of this office that the requested relief for lots 12 to 31 is minor, maintains the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and can be given favorable consideration by the committee, subject to the one condition that this relief is applied after the lots are registered with the township. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, any questions from council? Councillor Gregory?
Well, if a person that owns one of these properties wanted to build a storage shed back there. Now, as I understand it, they'd have to be 1.2 meters. So that doesn't leave a lot of room to put much of a storage shed. You know, I think as a homeowner, you like a little outdoor storage, garden tools, and all that. It's very common. And it's probably one of the bylaws that's not enforced. And there's all kinds of storage sheds that are right up against the fence. What's your comment on that as far as future storage sheds, as far as lot coverage first, and then secondly, how practical is it to even have a storage shed on a small lot?
In terms of the lot coverage, we did speak to the township's engineering consultant and the chief building official. And I spoke with the owner about this as well. So everyone is confident and satisfied that the existing grading plan, engineered grading plan for this ownership, if people do erect accessory structures or sheds on the backyard, that it's not going to interfere with the anticipated grading of the of all the lots of that section of the subdivision. So in terms of lot coverage, the way things have been engineered and graded, there should not be an issue. In terms of the whether people choose to erect a shed and take up space in their backyard, that would be there. Anyone could erect a, I think it's a 10 by 10.
Yeah, without a permit.
Without a permit.
So that would be another 100, so that won't affect the lot coverage?
It will not. Well, it would not affect the lot, wouldn't affect the lot coverage. So you can erect a certain size without it contributing to the maximum lot coverage.
It wouldn't contribute, so if they're already at 45%, building 100 square foot. Yeah.
Would not be calculated with coverage, that's correct. And I believe in discussion with the owner that requesting these variances are to provide the opportunity to create homes of a certain size. It doesn't mean that this will actually be the case when it comes time to build. This is to provide for that opportunity. So by the time these homes are planned and developed, it is possible that they would not choose to hit this maximum. I think what was your other question about the shed?
They can contribute to the.
It does not.
Any other questions for Laura? Go ahead, Councillor Gills.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, Planner, so what would be the difference in the maximum house structure on our current rules compared to what this would be amended to? What would your square footage change if you went to the full max of that property with these variances? What would be the square footage of the home that would be allowed on that property?
Like the base?
Yeah,
I haven't done that calculation. Right now you're allowed 30% lot coverage. This would do 45%. Perhaps the owner would be able to provide that information.
Well, currently we have 38% allowed in phase 5.
And because these lots are smaller and they're shallower than the rest of the lots in this particular phase, that's why we're asking for the increase of 45%. We don't know that it's actually going to be used. It's just that the builder has different models that they have plans for that they currently use. And they requested that if we could have this variance allowed, then that gives them a better choice to offer the market when clients come forward. But they don't actually know that they'll use that maximum. But as I say, we're using 38% as the maximum.
Any other questions with the planner?
Or the planner.
Okay, so now we're down to Brian Sherrill, say you make any comments you want, and then we'll don't want to go over you later.
Well, I kind of just, spoken in the direction that is the reason for this request. Laurel presented it great, and we understand you discussed lot 32 because of the unique shape of the lot. That if it's necessary to request more coverage or setback variation, we'll have to come back and ask for that at that time when we have a specific footprint of the home requested. We don't know at this point if we'll have that issue, if we may not. So as it's presented, I'm very much in agreement of how it's done.
Okay, so you're okay with the recommendations in the report?
We are.
Okay, anyone in the public want to speak in favor of the application? Anyone in the public want to speak opposed to the application? Being none, back to council, anyone in council want to make a comment? Council Pickett, you have a question?
No, I just, I wanted to confirm that when we approved the plan of subdivision, this was the lot size that was proposed in that plan. And what's changed is the size of the home that wants to go on. That's the nuts and bolts of what we're doing.
So are you satisfied with the answer? Okay, any other questions? Councilor
Mr. Mayor, through you, Brian, why specifically these lots? Like presumably, according to the drawings that I see here, they're all roughly the same size. But you're looking to shrink up several of them, and I presume in order to make room for the roadways that have to go alongside of them?
Well, what we're looking to do is have the opportunity for the builder to use his current building designs that he has that will fit onto these lots. And specifically, the reason comes back to these lots are slightly less in depth than previously. Mostly we have 35-meter lots, 37-meter lots, but these being 30, we have that particular aspect of it. And then the exterior side lots, as Laurel pointed out, it's just it's done in, I would, a great number of other municipalities where this particular builder builds, that they're able to build closer to that street on that side lot, on that side area, and make better use of that portion of the property. So it's a more of an option thing that the builders this particular builder is looking for, that he can offer these several different home plans that will fit onto these lots, and he doesn't have to alter those.
Councilor Mulder.
Thank you. I note in the report that the lots are to be graded in such a manner that there will not be a requirement for rear yard swale.
Yes, that's right. The grading of it won't change. The design of the stormwater management stays the same. And the size of the stormwater management retention area has no issue handling that amount of water.
No, I'm just referring to the adjacent phase 3 that's been in existence for some time, and the swales that are in those rear yards have been subject to some consternation. So if we can avoid that again, that would be good.
Yeah, there will be no need for that to have a swale in the back.
Any other questions? Just a, one question or comment, referring to Councillor Yipman's comment just a moment ago. So there is no, drainage east to west, between the two lots. It's all going to be either north or south, depending on which street you're on.
That's correct.
Okay. The other one is, I think, was it 1,800 square feet we put on these lots?
I'm sorry.
1,800 square feet, was it put on this lot?
There, we can go less, like, you know, I didn't actually, you asked me that question earlier as to how small, and I didn't actually get an opportunity to talk with the builder, whether he has 1,500 square foot plans or how, you know, how small, he actually does have plans that will fit under these. Obviously, these lots being smaller will accommodate smaller homes more readily and more affordably going that direction.
They could, on the other hand, they could also, accommodate 1,800 square feet.
They could.
So I think the reason I asked that is, if we're trying to find more affordable housing and all that, 1,800 square feet doesn't sound right to me. But anyways, the builder has to at some point sell these. So I guess if too large a house doesn't sell, we'll build something different, second time.
Right.
Any other questions or comments from, committee? Councillor Yipman.
For you to the planner, what restrictions are there in terms of height on these houses? Like, if we're going for a smaller footprint, is there anything that prevents a builder from going up?
I'm just looking at the zoning provisions. It would be with the R1 provisions, which I can't remember off the top of my head.
Sorry to bring that.
No, not at all.
Guess the crux of my question is, around affordability is similar to you. If we're gonna go with a small, like even a 1,200 square foot footprint, but we go 3 stories high, we still charge $750,000 for the house rate, so. What keeps that from happening?
Through your Mayor, the max height of the building in the R1 zone is 11 meters or 36 per minute. They've never requested any variance for that.
In theory, that would accommodate three levels. I suppose not with the roof structure.
Yeah, okay. Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Councillor Driscoll, and the motion would be
To approve.
approved. Councillor Wade, are you seconding now? I am. Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And we,
So 20-day period, notice the board tomorrow.
Fine.
so we're expecting those building lot or building permits to be in here, 2 weeks tomorrow.
We're working that direction.
Okay.
Thank you, council and staff.
Need a motion now to adjourn, moved by Booker, second by Gillis, adjourn to the Committee of Adjustment and Defense Council. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. So we return to council. Should be maybe here. And be done, I think, Rob Walton, you're next. One at the table, please, Rob. Now, are we sure this is the final report?
We're never sure of anything till it's passed, are we?
Anyways, go ahead, Rob. Thank you very much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. So where we're at today, it is a pleasure to be here. Where we're at today is we've done the evaluation of going forward with how you're going to charge out your stormwater costs in the future. We did public consultation on that. Council did give staff and myself authorization to bring together a draft bylaw. And maybe this is a bit odd coming in front of council, I've worked on dozens of bylaws over my municipal career, and usually we just drop them, they get in front of you and get past them, but there's a lot of stuff in this, and I think it's good for council to have a look at this in a draft, understand what you're doing, and then the proposal will be after today, if council's good with it, we'll bring it back on probably May 20th to your next meeting before it can be done. So that's what we're here today, is just to talk about that. Been great, your staff has been great to work with on getting this going. There's big pieces of work behind the scenes. You see all these maps and all these 1,170 some properties which are involved in making sure we got them all properly assessed in there and whatever. It is a big piece of work, and we've gone back and forth on that. And the county GIS people were amazing to work with. And since we had done this project in Zora before, we learned a lot from that project, and it certainly made it a little easier for this one, which is good too. So, but this started out a few speaking points here. This is a long-term plan. You've got your CLI ECA for all your stormworks actually requires you to do the works to maintain them and to get together a long-term financing plan for how you're going to do this. So this is just a piece of this, is that how you're going to fund that, and it is required. Now, there are other ways to do it besides the stormwater bylaw, but this is the direction we're looking at right now. It's a long-term plan, and the good thing about this is the work has to be done, and everybody needs to pay their fair share. And in this bylaw, everybody does pay. You're either paying under this bylaw, or there are like 5% of properties in these communities are actually exempted. But those properties will pay their fair share under the Drainage Act and as they're assessed under the Drainage Act. So you pay one way or the other. 95% of the properties in the 5 communities actually pay the minimum fee. So they're 0.4 of a hectare or less, and they pay the fee as the minimum fee, which is set out in the bylaw. So we've done something different here. We have a tiered fee here. 4 communities, Beachville, Brownsville, Salford, and Sweeburg will pay, as proposed right now, $7 a month for the fee. And in Mount Elgin, it would be $11 a month. And that recognizes that there is more stormwater infrastructure there. There are more ponds. There is more cost to the future of their work. During the consultation, one of the things that was the public looked at and wasn't happy with was financial plan that I had put together for this. And you gotta remember on this is there really wasn't a financial plan here before, because what happened was every time drainage was needed under the Drainage Act, you did the work, you built it out under the bylaws that were there. So there was no long-term plan for this. You didn't have a plan. We're going to do this, this, and this. It did the work that was necessary to build it out. Here we're doing a different thing where we're getting a rate in there, we're collecting money, and we've got the money to do the work, and then you'll be planning an operation maintenance plan towards when you're doing these things. And say for the Brian Graves, it's just here, the first pond in that subdivision, it's been brushed now, and there's work towards cleaning that out that's going on. These things will go on. You've got, I think there will be eventually 4 or 5 different stormwater management infrastructure pieces in Mount Elgin. As the new phase, which you were just talking about here, when it goes, there's a big pond there. There's one in phase 1. There's a pond on this, the Campbell Drain out on County Road 18 at the east side. There's one in phase 5. So it all adds up to work that needs to be done. So some of the public weren't happy with the financial plan. So at a very reasonable cost, we got a consultant, BMA management consultant, to look at that plan. And also look at the asset management that the county and the township has been working on over this period of time to look at a long-term projection of operation maintenance and capital replacement of those works already there. And they came up with 2 plans there. One was the rate, which I had proposed previously, was $5 for the 4 communities and 9. And that would work to start out with, but over a 15+ year period, you would need to be doing 5.5% increase every year to get to the reserve that they would see is needed for the long-term replacement. They also did a second look at the 7-11 scenario, and then you need a lower increase each year. And we're proposing to go forward with 7 and 11. If you look at the report that they did in Appendix 3, the average fee in Ontario for the minimum size lots is around $10 a month. So if you average these out, it's we're sort of really in the same ballpark, I would say. And this, we have done now the calculations based on every property being assessed. And then the ones that are 5%, we had to do the calculation. So that calculation now has been done. We're ready to pass the bylaw, and staff would be ready to put this in place for the July 1st billing on the tax bills. The annual revenue would be 130,000. That matches in, BMA reviewed that, and that matches in with their projections. That includes the township topping that up with 17,000, or 17,000 of that is paid from general funds, accommodating for the roads and properties that the township owns in these areas, which are not assessed under the bylaw. The bylaw itself is set up very simply, and it will not need to be actually amended until there's a change in the official plan boundary. You decide you're going to do development outside that and bring it in for payment. What happens with the schedules that are part of the bylaw is that staff maintain a schedule with every property in there, and when this subdivision you're just talking about today, when that becomes reality, those properties will all be inserted into the bylaw and then start to build. So I don't know whether I assume that's gonna happen fairly, the first phase that'll happen fairly soon within the new bylaw, but that'll be a continuum as the severance happens. Every time those happen, simply that the schedule for the billing just needs to be amended. Very easily set up. The other thing that's really good is that your fee is set in your fees and charges bylaw. So every year, as you look at your budget, you look at your fees and charges bylaw, if you decide that the 3% is what you need to add on to this community, you just do that as part of the fees and charges, it automatically happens. Decide you're good, you don't need to do any raises, you just leave the fees and charges be as it is. But again, the best thing is to look at the long term. You know, there were other options that we could have done here. We could have just left this with the Drainage Act, but as I noted in my report, you'd probably have about a $200,000 cost add into that just to update the engineering reports. Probably for now, that'll to recognize, bring them up to date, to recognize all the properties that are there. And then what happens with the owners then is you get, in these urban areas, you get a case where you're doing a maintenance, and then you're sending them the bill for the maintenance. Now, I don't know how high those bills would be, but say you're paying $7, or say for about $11 a month right now, okay, over a number of years. That doesn't happen. You do it under the Drainage Act, all of a sudden they get a bill for, $300 for stuff that had been saved for 10 years, and then you're billing it out to everyone. Then I think that the collecting money over time is really the way to go for urban owners. Very consistent with other municipalities, and there's lots of municipalities which are looking very hard to find. So those are my comments, and if you've got any questions on the actual bylaw or any of the implementation, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Okay, thanks very much, Rob. Questions from council? Seeing any, I think basically after the last meeting, you come back with, I think basically what we were expecting, the $7 is higher than the 5, and lots of fine and that. I guess that was, the ability to, as you just pointed out, the ability to adjust it on an annual basis, the fees and charges is sort of the way for us to kind of constantly watch the asset management. So, do we have enough money reserved, or, and I would agree with that. I think, well, nobody wants to pay on a consistent basis. They don't like the shock of a one-time bill, every 10 years or something either. So I don't know, any other questions? I went through the report, and makes sense to me. Any further questions or comments? Councilor,
To the nature of the report, nobody's happy paying more taxes, let's be honest, and this is another tax. But at the same time, I think it's better to be proactive, like say, nibble it away a little bit at a time rather than have to take it all at once. So I don't really see what other option do we have other than to do this.
okay. Don't see any disagreement. Any final thoughts on it?
No, I'm very happy. I think the project was done very well. I think that the public engagement we had was really good. Yeah, good contingent of people out there, they ask tough questions, like, that's what we should be ready for, and, I think we answered them pretty well, like, the things are brought up with the financial plan, where we came back with that. You know, there's work already started now on, say, the Great Pond, but your staff are working on getting that project going. Get it rolling, get it going, and then it becomes, you know, everyday business, and that's what we need to see happening. You're not the only municipality where this is happening, you know. I work in Grant County, we've got ponds there that are, you know, 30 plus years old, and we're getting at it and doing some maintenance on some of them now too, and we're looking at the same thing. We've got a few more residents which are gonna be impacted, and our public meetings, we're not very happy about here.
Well, we're pretty in on the road. Councilor, yes.
Just one further question, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So did I understand correctly in your report, this is gonna take us 15 years at these rates in order to get to the kind of reserves that we should have in place?
Through the mayor, I think what the financial people said is for the system to be fully funded. So at that time, you should have enough in reserves to do any of the works which are proposed to replace them. Now, the good thing in that is that a lot of these pipes, which is 80% of the projects, most of them don't need to be replaced in that time. So that's not really a big concern. Now, in the financial plan we've got right now, we showed in that there's gonna be a dip in the first year. If it costs $7,500 to clean that Graydon Pond, which we'll be lucky if it actually is that, we don't have that money just yet. You know, it'll take the first year and a half to have that amount of money for it to happen, but anyways, if you don't do anything here, you're starting, and you gotta figure out where that's gonna come from too, so, yeah, it'd be a fully funded status after the 15 plus years.
Okay. No other questions? Being none, thanks very much, Rob. And as you say, the bylaw comes back for the next meeting.
So we are, it will be for.
Okay, so do we have a motion here to direct staff to bring back the bylaw? Moved by Pickard, seconded by Wade. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's good. Okay, thanks very much, Rob. Next delegation, Rhonda Stewart. Rhonda.
Good morning.
Morning, Rhonda.
Councilor, it's just a little different, so, okay. Good morning, I'm Rhonda Stewart, I'm your Economic Development Director for Rural Oxford EDC. Crystal, on the screen there, Crystal and I are your small Ivy Economic Development team. Each year we come around to each of the councils and we do a little bit of a year in review. So this year we are also going to focus on a few recommendations for consideration for the year ahead. So in 2024, it was a big year for our organization and for this collaboration. We celebrated our 10th anniversary back in May, and we had a lovely award ceremony and recognized business and community leaders on this collaboration with a number of community partners. And yeah, so it marked the 10th anniversary of this collaboration that 5 rural municipalities support. Last year was also the first year for the Career Expo. It was a countywide initiative held in Woodstock. Last year, as well as this year, 5,000 people were in attendance and met with 150 different employers. Last year, we also launched Discover Rural Oxford. That is a program that we've spearheaded. And that was an initiative that was built upon the relationship that we had developed over the last few years with Canada's Outdoor Farm Show. And so in supporting them and looking at who it is we're here to serve, Crystal reached out to the Canada's Outdoor Farm Show and asked if we could have a display. And we know a lot of our small and rural companies are not able to get away from their day-to-day or get away from their businesses for 3 days straight. So what we did was put out an application process for all rural small businesses and producers to come and share in a large collaborative booth at Canada's Outdoor Farm Show. So I think we featured about 15 businesses over the course of 3 days last year. It was very, very successful. Great exposure opportunity, great show of support for what's local, what's rural, in Oxford County. And, I think today, we just went live with our applications for the 2025 Discover Rural Oxford program. So you can go to ruraloxford.ca/discover, share that with any local producers or tourism businesses that you know in Southwest Oxford. We also support the Oxford Tourism Innovation Grant Program. That's a collaboration with Community Employment Services. Community Futures Oxford, Tourism Oxford, and ourselves. It's a little bit of a Dragon's Den style program. Applicants from across Oxford County who have a tourism business who are looking to develop a new tourism product to showcase or provide to visitors to the area. They can apply to receive a $3,000 grant. They do a pitch. Because we all work so closely with these companies, we actually have external tourism experts award the official who gets the grant. So we do a lot of the vetting and working with the companies on their product development, but it's an exciting program each year to see what new tourism products are going to be created. So we do reach out to a lot of businesses proactively as we learn about new programs and opportunities. We tap a lot of them on the shoulder. We try and stay in touch. Last year we took a little bit different approach to our business retention and expansion efforts. So rather than just going to visit business or just doing, email or phone call outreach, we actually intentionally set up a focus to meet with 25 businesses in the manufacturing and food production area. And we went to the 25 different businesses, we talked with them. We also brought along partners from like Ministry of Economic Development, MAFA, FedDev, so that they can have a handshake and a contact with these other programs, with these other program providers. So that if they have questions about Southwestern Ontario Development Fund or any kind of like funding program or marketing program, that they had not just an email, but they had a face and a name to be able to put in touch. That's been successful. We had a number of rural businesses apply for Southwestern Ontario Development funding as a result of that. Announcements to follow and share. Part of that, those business visits, we did do a focus. We did send out a follow-up survey. On the last page of this slide, you will see a link to the full report, and there's more details. I just pulled out a few things here for this presentation. I mentioned that we use this as an opportunity to facilitate introductions so that our rural businesses know about programs that are available to them. 24 surveys were completed, and most of them were with companies who are already operating in Oxford County. There were a couple who just outside of Oxford County looking to invest here, so they also completed this survey. So as I mentioned, largely agri-food and manufacturing. You can see of the 24 respondents, $17 million was reported as invested in capital projects last year. 17 of the 24 companies are planning to expand or relocate in the next 5 years. And 2/3 of them plan to invest in smart manufacturing or new technologies. And then on the left, right-hand side of the screen, you can see some of the new markets that are being explored domestically, nationally, and beyond. For this slide here, we asked what commercialization plans do the companies have, and I know we've had an opportunity to take a look through. You can see a large number of growth opportunities for our rural businesses. combine the approximated investment for these commercialization plans, if they were all to come to fruition, would exceed $420 million. So I recognize that's lofty, but we did ask them to, monetize their goals. So that's just all to share. Entrepreneurship, business growth, and opportunity are alive and well in rural Oxford. In our 2025 work plan, which we are 1/4 of the way through the year, which is wild. You'll see a little bit of repetition here. The Career Expo, in the top right corner. We supported the Career Expo again this year. We helped secure some funding for the project. And we also, just as a small value add or gift back, we further enhanced and collaborated explore a career in local government booth for our 5 rural municipalities. We designed those, that banner that you see at the front of the table. We've got, handouts that you can give that describe like different career paths that students could take to find themselves in local government, as well as highlighting the 5 rural municipalities so that they could reach out and ask questions. The advantage of this collaboration is not all of our rural municipalities have job postings at that exact moment. And so not only were they able to share in the coverage of staffing the booth for the day, speaking with the 3,500 students, and then at the later part of the day, speaking with roughly 2,000 job seekers. They were able to split that time up, but they were also able to talk about career paths, opportunities that may be coming, and just it made it beneficial because if you didn't have a job posting active in March, on March 27th, you wouldn't want to stand there without a job at all. So between the 5 municipalities, they had jobs to discuss with people. So that was great. We continue to support local rural initiatives, Oxford Fresh Map, Taste of Norwich. Next month, we are sponsoring the Farm and Food Care Ontario. It's a breakfast on the farm networking event. We're also, to enhance that, we're partnering with Tourism Oxford to curate a road trip experience to area local businesses. So people coming to the area to learn about this farm to table experience, when we give them like an itinerary and opportunity to further visit businesses in our community. And for this year, in 2025, our focus for our business visits is going to be tourism and agri businesses. We've so far completed 4 visits, 5 after this afternoon. And last but not least, the save the date, the strategic plan, rural Oxford. We are midway through our 2022 to 2027 strategic plan. Our small but mighty team we are very goal oriented, so we have crossed off most items from our list. So we've contracted a consultant, and we're going to be working on the next 4-year strategic plan so that we can hit the ground running for 2026. We will be reaching out to a number of you over the summer. There will be engagement opportunities. We would love your feedback and input to hear what you would love, how you would like rural Oxford Economic Development to partner with you and to support the businesses in your area. So stay tuned for that, more details to come. And then I think last but not least, the recommendations for rural development. So each year I do these presentations to all councils, and often get asked, do we have any broad stroke policy recommendations? Do we have any opportunities for councils to look at or staff to look at in partnership with us? And so it's a little tough. Each of the 5 municipalities are different, and so it's tough to come up with like broad stroke, wave a magic wand and one policy will change everything. So it's just in general, some things that I would say is proactive secondary planning to prepare the rural townships for smart commercial and industrial growth, as Oxford County's population is projected to increase by 47,000 by 2046. And I know a lot of work is being done in our rural municipalities and our services and the planning, and everybody's working together. And I fully support and understand that housing for all is top priority. And then I just mentioned the proactive secondary planning piece, on the commercial industrial growth. Because it's very integral to, once the people get here, are they still gonna work in the GTA because there's not opportunity for them to bring their business here or grow their business here. So just taking a proactive look at that alongside the growth, for the residential. Municipally owned shovel-ready land, for sale in 1 to 2 acre commercial or industrial parcels. I mention this because it would drastically change the way we serve our 5 rural municipalities if we had marketable assets. We try our best to work with private landowners. There are definitely, I would say, in some cases, competing interests. If there were municipally owned land in small parcels where businesses could purchase knowing it's already got the right services and right zoning in place, and they're not gonna have to jump through all those hoops. That could be seen as a positive. If it's municipally owned land, for the sake of, matching commercial industrial opportunities with the growing population, that has a community focus, a community first focus. When it's privately held land, in some cases, there are a lot of extra variable factors that are not within a community's control. And a private, for-profit developer would have competing priorities sometimes on what a community fully needs. So I just thought that would be one opportunity if there were parcels available. It also came up because there are a lot of kind of like commercial shops, car repair places, popping up in like some of our rural downtown cores. And in order to protect and preserve a walkable retail downtown where it's a part of a thriving, complete community, we need retails and shops to be able to be downtown. And what's happening in some cases, expanding businesses are just going where the for sale sign is. And I'm sure there's a tool shed or a shop that doesn't necessarily want to be on Main Street, but they couldn't find anywhere else. So that's, we're kind of at the mercy, where is the for sale sign? So another reason why I suggest shovel-ready commercial industrial parcels is to move those outside of that small downtown core. Again, in that proactive planning piece, overlaying commercial or industrial development zoning on parcels that are abutting settlement area boundaries. Where practical, of course. I think planning is likely doing some of this work as we speak. But one of the reasons I think it's important is we know that most of the development in Oxford County is going to go to the settlement areas. On the larger scale developments, it's going to go to Woodstock, Ingersoll, and Tillsonburg first. On the dry industrial or other kind of like warehousing or other commercial opportunities that a rural municipality can handle, I think it's still going to be pointed towards, it's not 100% going to be pointed towards the settlement area because of the protective policies in place to protect our rural agriculture. So I think taking a look at our settlement areas and where it makes sense to maybe overlay a commercial or development opportunity. I do know also, currently there are parcels in the long-term queue that have a dezoning on them, and there's no need to replenish or replace those development held lands until there's a shovel in the ground and it's taken out of inventory. And that I can tell you, if we do take a look at our rural municipalities in this proactive kind of context, we might see that some of these parcels are never going to really come out of development zoning. It's kind of created a little bit of a gridlock with some of our former agribusiness parcels. And you have the appropriate or allocated development zoning. And so there's no need to give the municipality more because they have the right amount. But I can tell you there's a parcel of 25 acres in Mount Elgin right now. And it's got a D-zoning for employment land is the intention. And with all of the new residents coming in, the current businesses along that corridor are already getting increased complaints about noise and that kind of thing, even though they've been operating here for a long time. I find it very difficult to rationalize that 25 acres is gonna produce further employment land. And if we don't get that kind of sorted out, sorry, these are just some observations, so. And then collaborating on the 401 corridor, secondary planning study, that may not be the right term, I pulled that from another council meeting, but again, that proactive piece, looking at where smart growth makes sense along that 401 corridor. I believe SWACS, Blanford, and Norwich, they all have touch points. Is there an opportunity to collaborate and work together on that? Providing comments or input onto that. And then this comment has raised this last one has raised a bit of conversation, so I just want to preface it with stating as far as, okay, removing policy barriers that restrict on-farm diversified use or rural entrepreneurial uses to be able to only employ 2 people who do not live on site. So this is one that we had talked with planning about plenty of times. It didn't make the original cut with regards to the egg policies. So we have all agreed and we contact one another. We've got a very healthy relationship. So we agree that we're all on a learning curve and that we're just in the first year of these new egg policies. So it's going to take some time for everyone to get familiar with them, learning the differences between OFDUs and non-egg uses. But my recommendation was that limiting employment to 2 people who do not live on site. That's a restriction in Oxford County. That's not a restriction in the provincial policy statement. There are other ways to mitigate. I understand it was intended for scale, keep scale down. There are other ways to mitigate that. You footprint, parking spaces, there's other things. I just think that over time, we're going to see this continually contribute to friction or frustration and just not show business friendliness. How do we enforce if a small business has a little business going and they have 4 employees who do not live on site, but 2 are only on site at the same time? It's not enforceable. It seems very micromanaging and very in the weeds. And I just think that there's other ways to handle it, and I have shared this with planning, and I have the deepest respect for them and understand why that happened, like why it got there. But I just wanted to flag that was one that I am sharing with all of the communities to say, like, there's other ways to be restricting in size and still a little bit business friendly. Okay, so thank you for your time. I'm very much grateful and humbled for this opportunity to serve the 5 rural municipalities and the businesses here. And I want to thank you for your support. And that's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Questions, comments from the council? Councilor Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It has to be more of a comment, has to be a tough road. It's rural development without gobbling up farmland. That has to be one of your biggest struggles. Being a rural municipality, you have a tendency to love our farmland. And this, to get development, that's gotta be extremely difficult. So to chip away at, take an acre this year and then go down there, take another acre, and to continue that, it's gotta be a tough job.
There you go, Mr. Mayor. It is. I have. Is it ever a very interesting conversation regularly? Our office, our board, we are pro development and pro agriculture. We are pro smart growth. We get a lot of calls, a little fewer since Trump's announcements in January, but we get a lot of calls from outside of the area. People just see a chunk of land and they're just like, oh, I want to build something there. And then they'll call us and we'll first and foremost point them to the properties in rural Oxford that have appropriate zoning in place already or near appropriate zoning in place. We don't encourage conversations, that are like, let's wipe out this 100 acres in, you know, in general. But it is yes, it's absolutely difficult. And we try to be supportive on both.
Other questions, comments, Councilor Yip, next.
Thank you, Mr. Rhonda, you talked about the 25-acre parcel in Mount Elgin, and I'm a little uncertain as to what your outlook is on that parcel. It seems to be problematic to a certain degree. Can you speak a little bit further on it?
Oh, sure, sorry. That was just as an example. I know that, a few years ago that property was just dezoning, and when essentially, so it the Southwest Oxford, so when Oxford County does their kind of like macro planning of where, how much and where future employment and future residential growth goes. They kind of do the macro planning of that. And so just for an example or illustrative purposes, the 25 acres was the allocated development land for employment for Southwest Oxford. So essentially, until shovels are in the ground and that land is taken out of inventory, it would appear Southwest Oxford has ample development land for employment. Notwithstanding the condition of the 25 acres or how buildable it is, I understand there is, I'm not as fully up to speed with the current owners as I was with the previous owners. But I understand that there was at one point an opportunity to look at that 25 acres through a live work kind of zoning lens. Which I think is, if it's to stay as employment, I think that is very suitable, and I think I'm even suggested to the first owner. If you're gonna do employment land, you may wanna look at live work zoning because to try and fit in with what's permitted on that property or what could be permitted on that property. So that was just more as an example to say that 25 acres is the allocated amount. There may be a bit more, but that 25 acres is the allocated amount of employment land for Southwest Oxford until it's taken out of inventory. It won't get taken out of inventory until there's a shovel in the ground. So doing a little bit of proactive planning before maybe that is taken out of inventory. I kind of say, like, where do you want to see commercial and industrial property to go next? Does that answer your question?
I think so. What I'm hearing from you is, we can either get moving on it or carry on with zoning in other places, rather than just sitting on that 25 acres and not getting anywhere with it.
It's possible that 25 acres may have, it might be difficult to build on. I don't know. I don't wanna, I'm not an expert in that field, but if it does prove to be difficult to build on, and we're just waiting for that, a lot of opportunity could pass by.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Just a couple of things. First of all, we are hopefully next month starting on some of the work on the secondary planning. And so that's good news. I agree with you, it's difficult with shovel ready land if you don't own it. And I think that's part of it. The on-farm diversified use, I think, is another issue where it's new enough in the, it's kind of a baby in the cradle still. And I think we're gonna have to kind of organically just let it grow and see where it ends up and find out where the pinch points are. What do we need to do to fix it? So whether 2 people is the right number or 4 or whatever, or as you say, what other creative ways is to solving that issue. And what you're finding from this council, particularly any kind of use of agricultural land is always a tough one to swallow. And therefore the preservation of agricultural land is probably going to be very high on our priority list, which means you've got to maximize the value of whatever land you do. So okay. Any further questions for Rhonda? Thanks very much, Ron, for the work you do. Appreciate that, and we'll see you again. So,
Thank you very much for your time.
the next delegation is Ted Josky. So Ted, come on up.
Thank you, your worship, councilors. Nice to see familiar faces. Thank you very much for giving me this time, and I'll make it quick. I'm a Rotarian, and the Ingersoll Club has put 100,000 towards the multi-use center. We put 10,000 towards the service for seniors for their elevator. We organized over 500 children for our Easter egg hunt last week. We stocked Smith's Pond with trout for children's fishing day. We host the largest golf tournament in Ingersoll, and we raise 25,000, and all of it goes to charity. We organize and run the Ingersoll Rotary Christmas Parade. Rate Mates, which is one of my favorite things that the Rotary Club does, and that is Friday morning in the winter at the Ingersoll Arena. We pay for a bus to go around to the schools and pick up those handicapped children and adults. And we take them to the arena and we give them a free skate. And we have made sleds for those who cannot walk. And we have kind of a walker kind of that goes onto the ice. And about 60 people go on Friday mornings. And it's kind of, if you have an opportunity next year, come on down and see it at 10 o'clock and just see the smiles on some of those faces is unbelievable. Our whole purpose for Rotary is to make our community better. But some people fall through the cracks badly. Southwestern Public Health say that 1 in 5 people in Oxford County need assistance in one way or another. Social services is good, but it's not enough. Waiting list for housing is phenomenally long. Monthly checks will not cover all the things that are needed. If you have rental, it's not going to cover the full rental the way rentals are going these days and leave enough over for food. And families right now that are getting the pinch with rising costs and everything else, what suffers is potentially some children and food on the table or proper food on the table. And so our next Rotary project is a food warehouse. It was 3 years ago that my sister, who runs the interchurch baskets for Christmas, hampers that go out. There's about 500 basic food hampers, and there's an extra 400 hampers for Christmas. So there's about 900 hampers they put together, and there's no place for them to go. She called me about 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, and asked if I would help deliver them because the folks that they had delivering were on shift work and the turkeys didn't come in time, and it was 3 o'clock and they all went home. They needed help getting these things out to the public. And that's when I realized the conditions they were working under. There is no great space for them to operate. The place where they are has absolutely no heat and the roof leaks. And so you have, as you would likely know, that volunteers are usually in their 60s and 70s. And it just is a terrible situation for them to be working under, doing the good things they do. And so it was my job right then, as far as I was concerned, to find them a home. Well, I went through, Mike McHugh had different lands, but Upper Thames controlled that they weren't able to be built on. And I had other warehouses that were just too costly to be able to do anything with. Through my time as mayor, I got to know a gentleman by the name of Doug Yates, who is with GM Oshawa. And so 2 years ago, I started conversations with him about obtaining the gymnasium that is on the Candy site, which is opposite Seniors for Services. Anybody who's familiar with the Seniors for Services in town, right across the parking lot is a big gymnasium. It has been not used by GM for close to 25 years. It had some people in there, karate clubs and different things. It was broken into many times and abused. And so what they ended up doing was closing the doors and blocking up the windows, but somebody forgot to turn the water off. And when the heaters finally quit, everything burst. And so I was able to obtain a key and I was given the rights to go in and take a look at it. And actually, structurally wise, it's fantastic. It really is. It's fantastic, but it needs total new heating, new plumbing, cleaning. There is mold that can be removed. And the ceiling needs to be taped. The roof needs to be addressed because there are some leaks. So what we've done is we've patched the roof and it doesn't leak anymore, and we have everything laid out to be able to do something with this. Why do we want this to have happen? It's needed in not just Ingersoll, in Oxford County. There are different groups that want to help out, and that's Stitch, who need space, Interchurch needs space, Cycles of Life needs space, ISSI needs space. If the Food Rescue, Feeding Oxford needs space. St. James is putting a food thing, they need space. Everybody needs space, but they don't have any. There is no warehousing or place to be able to store food for the groups to obtain. So the thing is that what we wanted to set up was not somebody had a can of beans over here and somebody has a can of beans over there and it's their beans, beans for the groups to get together. Right now, headed up by Steve Tate, is a organized board that would be on the inside of this building, that they would address all the needs of warehousing because they know how to distribute, they know how to do it. Rotary does not. What we want to do is make the building safe, clean, and dry, and have a good spot for them to store the food. So no more, if we could, no more silos of over here doing the same thing as over here, but everybody trying to work together and store food and be able to distribute food. I drive from Tilsonburg to Ingersoll and St. Thomas to Ingersoll with my truck to get truckloads of food. But what this warehouse could do is go around and collect all the food that is being taken to the landfill right now by super stores, grocery store, Giant Tigers. They're going to the landfill right now where they could be going to this place. Why are they going to the landfill? Because nobody has space to keep them. Nobody has space to store them. Before we can use this building and get it underway, we have a furnace and air conditioning costs of $35,000, bathroom and plumbing of about $12,000, cleaning and ceiling repair of about $30,000, doors and windows 10, electrical repairs about 7, roof tightening 4, security and incidentals about 12. It comes to about 120,000. I just got a word from an electrical bill because the heating and air conditioning that's required. The power lines that go under the building are no longer secure because somewhere along the line, the conduit is connected, whatever. So a new hydro has to be brought from, believe it or not, the opposite side of the building to the other to drag over to 240 amp units to be able to operate the heating and air. And you say, why air? Why do they have to have that much comfort? Well, that isn't the comfort. The air is to keep the moisture down so that nothing mildews and nothing spoils because of the air content. What we want to do is kind of keep it around likely 55 or 60, where you can work in there with a sweater on, coat on, but we're not, it's not a luxury place or anything along that line. Is to keep it healthy and safe. We're just not relying on you folks. I've done my work and I have, the Rotary Club itself is putting in 25,000. Town of Ingersoll, I just got off their meeting and they're gonna put in 20,000. I have their Ingersoll Community Foundation that's putting in 20,000. I have 5 individuals that are gonna put in 5,000 each. I have, this delegation, I have a delegation tomorrow in Zora on the 14th, I believe it is. David is county, is the 14th. Now I have delegation status on the 14th, and I'm not going to stop there till I receive it all. but we're on our way. We're in good shape in that sense. We're close to the 90,000 one. And, why I'm here is to ask if you've got 5 or 7 or 10,000 just laying around. Laying around and wondering for the last, since the first year, since the budget was set, what do we do with this? Well, that's actually what I'm here to see if I can get some sort of financial support to help in this project to get it up and running. We don't want anyone in there until everything is safe. Right now, the roof has been patched, the furnaces are in, not powered. The air conditioning is, as I speak, are going in, not powered yet. And we have the electricians in repairing what damage is done by vandals. And then the cleaning people will be bringing in the scaffolding to white it. It's a canvas ceiling and the canvas is attached to the insulation. Not too sure if you're familiar with that. It bats for likely on how long they are, but they're on the construction. When the skeleton of the roof is there, these bats are put on, then the roof is put on over time. And so some of them are torn and some of them have been leaked, so they're going to be cleaning to make sure there's no mold. The drywall is being all removed. The bathrooms were totally destroyed. What plumbing, what pipe work was there is burst. And what toilets and different things were vandalized. So that is totally being replaced, and the plumbers that we have set for it are going to give us a $3,000 gift. And the rest we're going to have to address and look after. So before they can go in there and start assembling their storage units and whatever refrigerators or freezers, or what we've done is as Rotarians is left it to them, left that board do what they know how to do it. And so, like I said, Steve Tate and a couple of others are put together. Right now, there's 8 groups that are being involved with this. So it feels good that they're working together. We're gonna make it work, and we're gonna help those that can't help themselves at this point in time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ted. Questions from council? Councilor Yip, you're first.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions, so bear with me. Thanks for being here, first of all. So do I understand from your presentation then that the goal of this, the end goal is to bring all groups that are providing food assistance, either within Ingersoll or even a broader area, to get them all working together so that there's no duplication of effort?
Correct. There's no sense in having 3 trucks for different groups driving to Tillsonburg where they do have a warehouse at this point in time at the same times to do the same job.
Okay. Next question, do you handle any fresh produce or is this all non-perishables?
Okay, again, they want to, but that's not my department. This group who is organized, that knows how they're going to handle it, they want to put refrigerators in. So yes, I would believe they're going to be handling it, because so much of it is going to the landfill right now or being dumped.
So that kind of leads to my next question. I don't see any line item on here for refrigeration expenses.
Again, what the Rotarians want to do is get this building safe and warm and useful, and then this group is going to be looking for what they need. I'm going, as you noticed what I've said, I've gone to the major groups to be able to get this unit up and running in grid. So there's going to be lots of industry help and commercial help where these people are going to go to help raise some dollars to be able to make the facility workable for them, whether it's all your shelving units or whatever type of structure they're going to need, or refrigerators or freezers to maintain it. And so what we're going to do is, as the Rotarians, is make sure that they got enough hydro, make sure that they got a well-safe building.
What about operational costs?
Yes, Rotary is going to
building,
address those on a yearly basis. We have one of the largest golf tournaments in Oxford County, actually. We maximize at the, in fact, we go over the number allowed. And so we make about 25, we clear about 25,000 a year at that golf tournament. And And that has been our goal is to be able to, address and, look after the, maintenance in the, facilities. We don't know at this point in time whether we just contribute to bill paying of hydro and gas, and water, or whether we address it and look after it. We're just kind of into that stage now, but we do understand ongoing costs exist. We do understand that those are going to have to be addressed without drawing from what their jobs are as far as supplying food to people. So that end of it, very good question. That end of it, it's going to be looked at, it's going to be addressed. We're just not too sure who's going to be doing it. We will be either giving them dollars for them to pay, or we would pay.
Yeah. I think my last one. So is the intent of this facility then to become a distribution hub for the public, or only to distribute to different agencies who would then take it to their locations, say within downtown Ingersoll or whatever? Or is the intent to distribute from this facility?
At this point in time, my knowledge on how they're going to be setting this up is they are already organized with tables with, in Woodstock and in Ingersoll and Kempsford. And they are already organized on the distribution of food for the interchurch with their hampers and whatnot. That's already organized and in existence. Their problem is the lack of food and the lack of storage of that. So I do not believe at this point in time that they have planned for this to be a site for people, individuals to go for food, but for the people organizing it to make sure those people are their food, their needs are addressed.
Thank you. Councillor Durst, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ted, it's very good to see you, very good to see you. And I believe, excuse me, I believe that this project is a must-have. I'm really impressed with what I'm hearing today. I have a few questions. The first one is, you said that it is for people in all of Oxford County. You also mentioned Stitch, which is affiliated with a church. Would all churches who feed the homeless, who need food, would they be able to get the services?
Okay,
I kind of
Stitch
said that
isn't
wrong.
really associated with a church.
Okay.
But they're operating because they have a, and I lost the word, we have a legal kitchen.
Yes,
Anyway, to be able to put food out to people, and those are the churches that they work out of, but they're not, let's say they're out of St. James, they're not St. Paul's, St. Paul's, and what, but they're not a St. Paul's organization. And so, it's Interchurch that works out of there. Interchurch was a group of people that started out, with all churches saying, we gotta do something, so everybody sent a representative from all the churches, and they started an organization to help people. Well, that was the Interchurch, but Stitch is something different again. So is the Breakfast Club, so is the Lunch, so is all these people that put food together to address it. So it's not a church or let's say a sect driven groups, but they use what kitchens are available to them to get the job done.
thank you, Ted. I would like to mention the refuge in Woodstock.
Mhm.
They travel to St. Thomas to, I do believe, Hand in Hand. Is that the name of the company at St. Thomas, or is it?
Yes,
something
it is, yes.
Something
yes.
to do with,
We deliver to there too. You see, we pick up there, and we help out the best we can. If we're going there, or the different groups going there, they'll pick up stuff in St. Thomas and carry on right through. St. Thomas warehouse right now is going trying to go all around all over the place to pick up food, but they're not touching the food that's available. The amount of food that is available. So the thing is that it's gonna save so much travel and so much worry to be able to have a warehouse locally to be used by the county.
one more question,
Most
maybe two? Okay, do you have charitable status? And I'm asking that for private contributions.
Well, certainly, because that would go, all contributions would be filled up to the Rotary Club of Ingersoll, and they have charitable status.
All right.
I don't personally,
Okay, thank you.
but you can fill it out to me.
All right, I think that's about the end of my questions, and thanks so much, Kat. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? So, just a quick one, Ted, I'm kind of following up on, Councilor Whitman's comment. First of all, I think the idea of a warehouse where you can service a number of different groups from across the county, makes sense, and that's really what we're doing in St. Thomas now. And, having our own local one, I think makes a lot of sense, and the facility would work, certainly would be supportive of that. The question I had relating to, Councilor Whitman's comment. The capital dollars are usually the easiest dollars. It's the operating dollars, and while the Rotary Club was sponsored, I guess I'd be more interested in seeing what the budget looked like. And I'm not suggesting this is your bailiwick, but it may be something that, the operating group might want to, work on and present, so that people have a better idea of what is the anticipated overall cost for operating it. Because those are gonna have to be paid every month, every year, whatever. And, you don't want to set something up for failure, right? You want to set it up for success. And I think knowing in advance that we've got to raise X number of dollars for the budget, for their budget, probably really important. So, and I think from a council perspective, if we're thinking about granting, are we granting for capital or are we granting for operating? Two very different things. And, so I would, appreciate seeing that. And then, I would suggest staff will bring back a report or a recommendation on, as you say, where do they have that extra money hidden in the bank somewhere? But this should be looking for.
The operating costs on that is what they're doing right now, Mayor, is that, the cost to them at this point in time is going to be the same as they're spending now on the individual groups, and likely less. Only because we're already driving to pick up, rather than having one vehicle going around and picking up food, etc. The, let's say, the cost on the operation of the building, right now, at this point in time, electrically wise, Amy's going to look after that. So we'd be looking after the heating and water. And so, that's something that we, at this point in time, had felt that the, Rotary Club would be supportive or looking at.
Okay, good. Right, any further questions? Seeing none, thanks very much, Ted, we'll be back to you.
Thank you so much for your time, folks.
Yep.
Take care.
And the next delegation, Rebecca, come on up to the table. Thank you very much, Rebecca. As you know, the council had asked for kind of a brief highlights of what the homeless response strategy would look like. And, you know, is there any opportunity for SWAT to be involved? So I'll leave it with you to tell us about that. And then we have another subject we can raise in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me again today. I did have a PowerPoint on the agenda, but I'll use my time very wisely here and give a bit of an overview, because I believe you've seen the report that was brought forward to County Council. And maybe just give a little bit of background, especially with the main points in the PowerPoint there. So about a year ago, we started the process of developing a homelessness response strategy with really increasing needs around homelessness, food insecurity, which timed this very well, and you know, really the housing crisis in general. We did see an increase in homelessness over the past several years. So there really was a need to really tackle this from more of a strategic level, to make sure that we have a set of actions to go forward. And in no way is this a solution to homelessness, but this is really just the direction that we're moving forward with. And just noting that it will be something that's more long-term. So it was a year process. We did work with a lot of community groups to get this done. So it is a very community-driven project, looking at really, we honestly think in total, we had about 3 in-person focus groups with over 50 people in attendance from those community partners that are really working in the system, which really drove the actions that are in the strategy. So Went to county council with a set of 49 actions. This is how we're moving forward to address homelessness and along with the county council report that is on the agenda there. And maybe just to give a brief overview of some of the bigger actions that maybe would be more notable in the community. One of the largest ones is moving forward with acquiring a property to establish a homelessness support center. Right now, our shelter system is out of 3 different locations, along with some temporary locations, specifically in Tilsonburg, and some hotel stays in Ingersoll. That's a bit of an inefficiency in the system. So really, we're trying to move forward with something a bit more stable and acquiring kind of a main property for that. That would look more along the lines of a community support center along with emergency shelter beds. So it's combining the support services with what those individuals need. So that's one of the bigger strategies moving forward. Some of the other ones, you know, bumping up our rent supplement program to ensure that we can get more people housed, because that is a very big focus. Also focusing on supportive and transitional housing, because we can provide as much support as we want, but until there's that unit there for someone to go into with the necessary supports, we cannot move people through the system. Some of the wording here also relates to the Heart Hub and Wellness Center. I'm not too sure how familiar this council is with the Heart Hub that was approved in Woodstock, but that is a treatment center for mental health addictions, and the Woodstock Hospital will be running that facility. That actually is a bit of a bigger system. So while it will be a treatment center in Woodstock, there's really a bigger system around that, and that system around the wellness center actually involves all of our community partners and the county. So that system around is really your emergency shelters at the start, along with your community partners, transitioning people into the treatment center if they need that assistance, and then transitioning out into supported and transitional housing, which is where the county and community partners come back into that again. So the actions in this strategy really pull the system together, and, you know, going from the delegation that we just had previous, trying to really break down some of those silos and get people working together so we have some efficiency in the system. So that's really where this strategy is putting us to. Again, it will be long-term. We have to work through many of these things, but it will be a community effort, and we will be looking to establish a working group of those community partners to really get these strategies going forward. But the main one we're moving forward with right now is trying to acquire that property for that homelessness support center. Is really that anchor in the community as we move forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and if there's anything you wanted me to maybe elaborate on, I'm here for anything that you have. And sorry, I didn't follow the PowerPoint, but I thought it might be a bit better.
Any questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Grizzly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said that you had your sights set on securing or getting a property. Do you have one in mind?
Not yet. So through the mayor, I'll say it's going to be a bit of a process. We are working through it, and part of the recommendations that came out was to have an ad hoc committee made up of county council members to really help us work on property. Probably targeting Woodstock as being the largest urban center in the county, but we're currently working through that. So it will take some time for sure.
Go ahead, Councillor Grizzly.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. I certainly did appreciate it. So can you really push that through? We desperately need it.
Other questions? Councillor, you have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I think I was one that asked for you to come here today and present the report to us. I recognize that time's a little bit limited and we're running over time a bit. To me, this is a good news story because this whole issue of homelessness, addictions and that sort of thing, it almost seems like too big of a problem to tackle some days. And so it was really encouraging to me to see that somebody's actually grabbing the bull by the horns and trying to get this thing coordinated. My question is, if you're talking about locating a property and putting a facility on, most likely in the Woodstock area. And I understand that why, but if you have somebody that's struggling with homelessness in, say, Tilsonburg or Tavistock or Plattsville, for instance, this talks about being an Oxford County plan. How do you assist that person that's remotely located from that center? Like, is there supports in place in order to get people to a shelter in Woodstock, for instance?
Through the mayor. So As of right now, actually, the services in Woodstock are considered the regional shelter. While they're not at one location, it still is a county-funded regional shelter per se. So anybody who is looking for assistance in, say, Ingersoll, we do provide, you know, temporary hotel stays, but we do also provide transportation to this, the services in Woodstock. So that would be the same going forward. Unfortunately, it's sometimes inefficient to have, you know, permanent shelters in every one of our communities, and with us being so vast, you know, in area, it does make it a little bit difficult, but we certainly have those measures in place to make sure that people can be transported or be located appropriately for those support services. I will say, while we are looking at establishing, you know, something more permanent, we still do have temporary shelter in Tillsonburg. While, you know, the goal would eventually be that we can reduce emergency shelter beds, sometimes that isn't, you know, the short-term reality. So those type of things would probably still continue. And then we really evaluate the system as we get something more permanent to see if we can look at something a bit different. But the overall goal is to reduce emergency shelter beds. But in order to do that, you've got to have appropriate support services to make that happen. Bit of a long-winded answer for you, but.
Good. Other questions? Comments? Councillor Craig.
Yeah, this is good work. I hope it comes to fruition. To be funded through the county, the whole thing, the land, the building, the whole shop.
Through the mayor. So not too long ago, the city of Woodstock received building faster funding from the province. That is proposed to be used for any efforts towards acquiring their property. We'll see how that pans out. And then the county, of course, would have to contribute in some way. Those considerations would obviously have to come forward to county council for consideration, but at this time, it would certainly be a joint effort in terms of funding.
Other questions? Councillor Gill.
In that regard, the HERT hub, that is provincially funded, is it not?
Through the mayor, yes. That's provincially funded through the Ministry of Health, actually. Yeah.
Any other questions? More of a comment than a question. Appreciate the strategy, I've said before. But the strategy is only as good as the potential to implement it. And therefore, the required pressure on county council to make sure that the funding is there to actually move things forward. And well, I think the strategy is well thought out and makes sense. It goes nowhere if we're not willing to invest in it. So that's hence that's where some of the tax dollars go. So okay. Anything further on this? And then I did ask Rebecca to chat about one other thing. So do you want to, at the last just for councilors, information at the last county council meeting, we had a report that said apparently we don't need as many daycare spaces as we thought. So do you want to just kind of give us a brief overview of that?
Yes, and we're working on this, I will say, this is not a final answer, but about probably a few weeks ago now, we were notified from the ministry that Oxford's childcare spaces have been significantly reduced, and when I say that, it means a 75% reduction. That is, you know, out of 47 service managers in Ontario, there were about 7 that have reduced space allocations. We're working with the ministry because that's actually not reflective of need. We have about 3,000 children on the childcare wait list right now, so it was a bit of an odd choice. There was no communication with us. It was essentially a recalibration of all the spaces across Ontario. So we are working with the ministry and doing some advocacy on that, because while they might think that that's reflective of what the community needs, it certainly is not. We need more childcare spaces moving forward. So I will say, as of right now, it's a bit of an open thing that we're working with the ministry on. That would be our allocation up until 2026. So obviously we'd have to get a new allocation following 2026, pending conversations between the federal and provincial governments, which is another conversation. So as of right now, I would say with some plans that you have going on with your administrative building, certainly we want to keep those conversations going. And I think we'll just make sure that that's communicated through to your council when we have a final answer on that, if that gives you any better direction.
So just to be clear though, Rebecca, the allocation from the province went from 651 to 159, I think, if I remember right.
For the year, yeah.
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 So, but the allocation there's no subsidy, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is there's no subsidy for building. There might be subsidy for housing or for furnishing. But the reduction in numbers, is that have more to do with the funding available for subsidizing? So we could have had 100 or 650 people subsidized. We're now gonna have 159 subsidized.
So it's actually, it's the cost, so it's along those lines, so it's the cost-based funding formula for the provider. So if someone's to open up a childcare facility, essentially they get compensated through the CBOG program, which is federal provincial program, to really pay for the operations of that center. So it's that funding, the operations funding, the cost-based funding.
Okay, so does that the subsidy to get down to the, what we commonly call $10 a day?
Yeah.
So if it isn't $10 a day, how much is it without subsidy?
Ooh, that's a difficult question. As of right now, we're about $26 a day.
That was what I thought. I thought it was
Yeah.
$7 a day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and of actual cost to the provider for that child.
I'd have to get back to you with that exact
Okay.
number.
Because I think, as we have this discussion, since, you know, how much would people pay for childcare? There's an awful lot of people that would pay $27 a day. And so I just, in our discussion as council, as we go forward on this, we need to kind of have a clear understanding that the, provincial commitment, whether it's provincial, federal, doesn't really matter, is smaller, but it's on the, per child part, not the actual building, because there is no subsidy for building.
Yeah, it's not the capital, because there would be no capital. It would be for, you know, and there probably is some funding for furnishing, but if it's not under CWAP, we can't provide the funding for furnishing. So I guess to be clear, you know, there was never capital. And then the operating has been, you know, taken away as well. So if they didn't want to go into the CWAP program, I mean, anybody can open private childcare, of course. Whether that's, you know, something a provider wants to do is a different story, but it's a bit of a, I don't wanna say roadblock. It's easier if you do fall under the CBOG program for sure.
Okay, any questions on that from council? I just wanted it because it just came out of the last council meeting. And I thought, well, Dr. Sarah, anybody saying she's kind of the county person on this. So go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just think kind of it's a backwards kind of step, but we're always pushing, you know, population and growth and density and all that stuff. And obviously, if you're pushing growth, you're gonna obviously change the demographics, you know, more population, leaving more kids, more seniors, all are gonna grow. We're generally Oxford's in a growth area. It just seems like a backwards way to go for how they're doing it. That's my
You know, the member of parliament, I remember the police forum. Any further questions or comments? Well, thanks very much for being here, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. So,
Thank you.
and the next delegation, Marie, are you ready to come up, please? We added you to the agenda
That's
this
very
morning
kind.
before you got here, so
Very kind there, thank you.
no problem.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for taking the time to squeeze me in today. I believe that you all received, I'm under correspondence, I suspect. I want to thank, Ms. Middleton for, being accommodating yesterday to get me in here. I think you all received, correspondence from Maggie Braun, Kipley, Canada, and I hope you had the opportunity to watch my delegation and Maggie's delegation, and read the report, read the 3 letters from the, residents that wrote in. And to understand that we had 777 people sign the petition, which I'm sure you know for everyone, there's another 10 that usually feel the same, we haven't gotten the petition to them. So I'm here today, just to answer any questions. I brought a slide with me. I don't want to repeat because you folks have already, I hope, watched my delegation. I don't want to go over that again. What I want to point out to you seems really, really appropriate this morning, especially as we all sit here hearing, talking about economic planning and development, food insecurity, rural development that gobbles up farmland.
the gentleman from the Rotary Club, what a blessing he is. I actually volunteer for Operation Sharing in Woodstock, and I come from London that has a food hub, and I think he's made a great decision. Sorry to waste your time, but to do that, to buy that building, it'll be very efficient. So we talked about the homelessness and all of those problems, and what I'm here today is just to emphasize the disconnect between the Oxford County Council and Oxford residents. And I say this with all due respect to Oxford County Council members. But what I've done is I put together a slide, which I probably won't be able to see. And what we did in our delegation was we wanted council to recognize that United Nations climate policy plans are not a priority for Oxford residents. And I'm not here to debate about the climate change. I'm not here to argue about that. I just want to bring to your attention the priorities of the residents of Oxford. So I thought this would help. So the climate action plans that Oxford, this is just a visual. These are some of the climate action plans that have come to Oxford County since 2017, when they adopted Partners for Climate Protection program. And there's a number of them. And council is always quick to tell us that the program is free. And that may be, but I'll tell you, implementing the initiatives is not free. So over the past 7 or 8 years, they've implemented 100% renewable energy plan, the zero waste plan, the green fleet plan. And folks, that cost Oxford residents $13 million to replace vehicles in a cold country with no infrastructure with 61 EV vehicles. The Partners for Climate Protection program is the one I highlighted, and again, the Renewable Energy Action Plan. When we looked at the strategic initiatives by the CAO in Oxford for the 2025 budget, you can see what the strategic initiatives are. This is the priority of Oxford County Council. Climate Action Plan, number 1. Community environmental sustainability. Internal diversity, equity, and inclusion. Community diversity, equity, and inclusion. Safe and Well Oxford, advocacy, and the strategic plan. And the strategic plan also is, unlike some of the other municipalities who leave climate action out of their strategic plan, Oxford County is their second pillar. That's what they really want to focus on. And they are proud of their initiatives and their leadership in global action, climate action. And could we go to the second slide? And I just want you to look at this. So in the 2025 Public Budget Engagement Survey, where you ask residents, what are your priorities? The first question was, what would you say are the top 5 priorities for your community right now? Number 1 was affordable housing. And I, with all due respect, I know you folks here recognize that. I heard you talking about it this morning. And I appreciate all your efforts in your municipality to recognize that. Affordable housing, safe communities and policing, active living, parks, trails, recreation. Number 4 was infrastructure, roads, bridges, and stormwater. That is your main core focus. It should be. And long-term care. And then the second question on that budget survey was, what would you like Oxford County to achieve in the next 5 years? Number 1, and I heard you speak about it earlier, how easy it is, and I'm not against development and small business. I want growth for this community the same as everyone else does. But their number 1 priority, we are a farming community, was more agricultural preservation. That's what people want in the next 5 years. No one asked for United Nations climate policies. Safer communities, increase in housing affordability and accessibility, better and more infrastructure to accommodate growth. So I just brought those couple of slides today, folks. I respect the work that you all do here. I just wanted to point out that with Oxford, we may have a disconnect between what the residents hoping for and what their goals are. So I just want to encourage, urge this council to reconsider withdrawing from the PCP program. And I know that you haven't signed up for it, but it is a trickle down effect. when Oxford County Council adopts climate policies that cost that much money, that's a third layer of taxation on the residents. We pay it. I heard someone say earlier about, well, is that funded through the county? Whenever it's funded through the county, the residents of Oxford are still paying for it. We're still paying for it. So you can say, well, that's Oxford County, but it's our paychecks, it's our tax bill. And I looked at, and I was gonna throw this on the slide, but I didn't, but I looked at the tax increases and I can't imagine how difficult it is for you folks to do a budget. Money is shorter and everything's more money. That counts in my household and it counts here around the table, and I understand that. But I looked at the tax increases, the property that Oxford County Council share. In 2021, when they announced the Green Fleet Plan, the increase in taxes was 1.4%. The next year was 3.5. They bought more vehicles. The next year it was 6.3. In 2024, the increase was 16.7%. Honestly, shame. And in 2025, it was 6.6%. Our hope is that Oxford County councils and our mayors from every municipality just can do better and focus on the core issues that are relevant to us as residents, and would refrain from and withdraw from those kinds of policies that take up a big part of our budget. They take up a big part of staff time. We have to hire environmental experts. We have to hire consultants. It gets very, very costly to implement these programs. And so I know you saw it. You've got the information. I appreciate and respect the job you do. And I just wanted to come here and show you the disconnect between the priorities, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions to council? Thanks, Marie. Questions to council? Just a couple of things in while they're thinking of, you mentioned the $13 million spent on Green Fleet.
Yes, sir.
Over how many years was that?
5 years.
5 years. And if they hadn't bought what you're calling Green Fleet and they bought regular fleet, what's the dollar difference?
Well, you're well aware that I would know that, and I know that you look at the benefit long term, but what we forget too is how you maintain those vehicles here and how you dispose of the batteries. We've already had stories of problems with those vehicles. People have seen them on the side of the road. I can't answer that question, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so a study just done a couple of weeks ago, I just read it the other day about in the paper actually. The electric vehicles actually have fewer problems, but I don't want to get into that.
No.
Frankly. I share with you this, or I agree with you, there's challenges no matter what we do, right? If the county hadn't spent money on greening the fleet, and it's not $13 million. But anyways, if we hadn't spent money, we would have spent it on more fuel and more maintenance and that sort of stuff. The work that the county's done shows that the vehicles end up being above cost neutral or slightly advantageous to go green. We can debate that all day. I don't want to waste your time either, Marie. I want to be fair with that. I think using that number is misleading to a certain extent. But this
It's actually from your Green Fleet plan.
The
number, we did the math on it. It took a long time. It's a big document. But there's all the vehicles that you bought. You actually, I'm sure everyone knows you bought the first hybrid ambulance as well, which I don't think they even do anymore.
Nope. And that's one of the roles of government, is to be leaders, not to be followers.
Indeed.
And so when councils, and this council as well, their role is not actually, and this is the part that we misunderstand through democracy. So people have this perception that democracy means that whoever you elect does what the people want. And the reality is that people that are elected have a higher responsibility than just to what people want today. They have a higher responsibility to say, what is the long-term good for the community, and to create direction or leadership in certain directions. So sometimes it's exactly aligned with people, other times it isn't. And I wouldn't disagree with you on this, that not everybody would put environmental issues at the top of their priority. But and I would suggest that county council doesn't either. we spend a whole lot more money on a whole lot of other things. But anyways, I'm just, I don't want to, try to be combative. I'm just saying, I think there's a justification for it. And, the way to change things is to actually change things.
And
Change council.
I appreciate you, Mr. Mayor, and I didn't come here to debate that issue either. I would just say that, like you said, leadership is, I believe leadership actually is a reflection of what the community wants. And as a resident or a farmer or a businessman, we also look long-term for the benefit of our families, for the benefit of our community. I know that you have to do that as a leader, but my husband does as a leader in his home and as a business person. So he has to make the tough decisions, and your decisions matter. And the community's watching, and that's all I'm here to say, that the community is watching, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, and again, Maria, I think the challenge always is that we seem to decide that we have to pick sides.
Yeah.
And the reality is that that's absolutely ridiculous, because no matter what you or I or anybody else says, part of the time we're right, part of the time we're wrong. But in reality, I'm probably as wrong as you are, and you're probably as right as I am. Right? And I think that's where my concern about things like this is that we start to separate society into different camps, rather than trying to work together and sort of say, okay, what do you see and what do I see? And I think we elect people that we hope have vision for the long term and are prepared to, quite frankly, take a bit of abuse because they think they have to get somewhere, or they do have to drive the community forward. And as it was said at county council, I think there's a great deal of appreciation when people come back and say, I'm not sure that I agree with what you do. And I would be willing to guarantee that everybody on this council has had those conversations in the grocery store or at the Ball Diamond or after church on Sunday, right? It's one of those things that just happens. But more often than not, when you explain things to people, they say, well, yeah, I don't really agree with it, but I can understand how you got there. So, and I think that kind of, and that's why I was so pleased to see you come forward, because I think if we don't have this conversation, we end up being two camps, and the next thing you know, we're throwing things at each other, and that's often called war. And I don't want that either, not for my community.
I appreciate that sentiment, and I don't want division any more than you do. And I would just remind the council that of the 26 items on the list for the survey, environmental sustainability, the residents rated as number 17. It is not a top 5. So when we're in tough times, Mr. Mayor and Council, and we're looking at the problem of homelessness, and we're looking for money to give Ted, I'm sorry, I just didn't know his last name. And we're looking for all of these issues. I think our priorities for a local council, and that's the 2-tier system, should start at home and be a focus on all these 8 municipalities and not globalist policies. But I respect your position, Mr. Mayor.
I would just point out, though, that the county nor the township have ever received either direction or funding from any other level of government other than the local people. So the local councils make local decisions and spend local money. As far as I know, we've never received money from FCM. The Green Municipal Fund.
You may not have, but county council may have received a loan or a grant from the PCP program. That's good to know.
Yeah.
But
and not
something that
to
you spend my money.
Because you made a comment earlier about things are free. There is no free lunch. I learned that as a little kid, and I remember seeing the sign. There is no free lunch. It used to, if you want something, get off your butt and work for it. And I think we should continue that. But anyways, this council has sat for a long time. I think they're ready for a break. And you and I should talk again in the future. So
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, folks. Thank you very much.
okay. Thanks for being here. I'm gonna call, unless you have something else, Maria, I'm gonna call a 5-minute break and let council make use of the facilities if they want to. You're back to work, Mary Ellen. Steve Gill and Terry Dustin. Oh, that's the next report, please.
Yes, everybody, I'd like to introduce, our new chief building official, Brad Smale, who has actually presented his first report today.
Go ahead, Brad.
Mr. Mayor.
We put you on before we had anybody else give any reports, so you won't know how they do it.
Oh, perfect, yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
It's not my first rodeo, but yeah, I just, Mr. Mayor, members of council, just putting this report before you, today for your consideration. Just outlining some, strategic, items here for, the immediate agenda here over the next 6 months or so. So that, council has an opportunity for better understanding of that and obviously, just to say hi and introduce myself. So I'm Brad Smale. I've been acting as chief building official here for the township since April 6th. That process to work its way through the contracting consulting review authority that we've been using to date. As relates to some key initiatives, the projects over the next few months that I'm looking to try and kick off here. First, 2025, we are now operating under Ontario's 2024 Ontario Building Code, effective April 1st. So a more recent date here that I'm not sure the council was aware of. Effective April 1st, in the province, throughout the province, all municipalities, we are or will be issuing permits under the scope and authority of the 2024 code. So you may or may not have been aware that there was a bit of a grace period between the first and the January 1st date and the April 1st date, where if there was a project in continuance or design continuing in process for submission of application, they were allowed that grace period to submit under the provisions of the 2012 code for issuance up and until the first, effective April 1st. That grace period transition or expired, the transition is completed, so that all projects must be designed and reviewed and issued under the authority of the 2024 Ontario Building Code. So you may end up with some questions or some confusion about that on the go forward here by some of the members of the community. There have been some significant changes to the Ontario Building Code, as you can imagine, over the 2012 to the 2024 transition. It's a quite a long period of renewal there. They missed the province missed a few target deadlines, I think. So additional to that, building department annual report, just wanted to give council some insight on that. So there are some regulatory requirements for reporting to council as relates to the fees process under the building code and under the building bylaw. So in my process of taking over here, I was looking for some background information on that basis, and I wasn't able to find any. So I'm looking to hopefully outline the scope of the annual report that the Ontario Building Code speaks to in terms of the direct and indirect costs of delivering building code enforcement services to the community, and on essentially a basis of user pay fees evaluation. So I will hopefully over the next few months produce a report for council on that basis that speaks directly to those requirements under the building code, and update that information for council's consideration. That leads to the last bullet point there, just a building department operational overview and update of the township's building bylaw, which hasn't been updated it's been amended at a variety of opportunities here along the line for the past 10 years or so. But there are some new regulatory changes that have been rolled out here recently and over the last 10 years that probably are worth updating the bylaw significantly to reflect. So aside from that, council has any questions?
Thanks very much. Any questions for Brad? Councilor Yetman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brad, you talked about significant changes to the 2024 code. Do you know, and does the new code require fire suppression systems in agricultural buildings yet or not?
So the answer to that is yes, or sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Yetman. The short answer is yes. There are provisions now where fire protection and prevention systems as well as alarms and detection have been added to Division B, Part 2 of the code now for large farm buildings. That's not to say that that's required for all farm buildings. Again, these are just the large farm buildings, and even of those, not all farm buildings will be expected to be provided with a comprehensive fire suppression system in the way of a sprinkler system. In fact, I would say it would probably be a rare occasion where it would end up being required. That all said, to be perfectly honest, many of the Part 2 provisions, the new provisions, are going to affect the community here in Southwest Oxford quite significantly, but in my personal professional evaluation of it, and I've done quite a bit of research on this. I think this is in the overall effect a good thing. The Farm Building Code, the National Farm Building Code of Canada, have not been significantly updated since 1995. And as you well know, the state of our industry, the agricultural building industry, has moved forward significantly since 1995. We don't build barns the same way that we did in 95 as we do in 2025. And it was time to catch up those requirements so that it reflected the true construction types that we see in agricultural buildings.
Any other questions? I have one, Brad, and it's January 1st was the cutoff, so if I put in an application to you on December 31st or to go above the office, if I got an application before the end of the year, I would have to follow the 2012 building code, right?
Sorry.
Okay, so then if I put it in a week later in January, I would have followed the new code. Or did you get that? So many days of grace, didn't you?
Yeah, sorry, so to explain it a little bit more rationally, the design process for the construction of all new buildings is a protracted process. So for projects that were, let's say, initiated in December of 2024, and the design process began, reasonably speaking, prior to that January 1st date, the province, and this is consistent with previous code transitions that we've experienced over the past, the province allowed for the idea that design processes are a continuing process. It's more than just a spot apply type of situation. So it allowed for people some surety that if they started out designing a building under the code that they knew of the day that they started, that they would be provided an opportunity to have that permit reviewed and issued under that code. And that 4-month period allowed for a 4-month essentially design review and approval process under the Ontario's 2012 code.
Okay, so if I actually got my permit in December, does anything happen to the requirements for that permit as long as I start building it over the next 6 months or a year, I get the building finished?
No, complicated, even though it's more complicated for the building department to continue administering that permit or that enforcement service. Yeah, we do have to have an eye on both codes simultaneously for a number of projects for a continuing period of time.
So is it the design or the issuance of the building permit that is for our state, the cutoff point?
Exactly, the key indicator of what specific code.
Yeah, so which would, like,
Right.
if I got a design into you and you hadn't issued a building permit, would that matter or would it be? I guess I'm just trying to understand, if there's, because there's always gonna be a gray area, right?
Yes.
Well, I brought it in on December 31st, but they didn't process it to January 1st and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was trying to sort of, for council understands, because my understanding was if I had a permit before December 31st, the rules I don't have to abide by the new rules. I'm not saying I should or shouldn't. I'm just saying I don't have to. That's correct.
That's largely correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Any further questions? Need a motion here to receive the report. Sure, all over the place. Moved by Gillis, second by Woodner. Adult Council of Township South Doctor Street Report BD 06-2025, street building official introductory report is information. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Then we move on to CO 2025. This is the sale of Kenny Street in Beachville. Julie, please.
So as the follow-up report to council, we had a previous discussion on this matter at the March 18th meeting. During that meeting, we heard from several residents surrounding Henrietta Street Road allowance. A number of the concerns related to potential development of the parcel immediately abutting this unopened road allowance. I have summarized those comments in the staff report. Following that meeting, we did have a meeting with Ms. Patak as well as planning staff to go over some of the concerns that were raised. We did note that many of the concerns would be addressed through development application processes if we continue on with this. So I know that council has considered other requests from other landowners abutting this parcel to purchase the land. However, at that time, these requests weren't supported because we recognized that there was potential for development. In order to explore that further and just determine what could potentially be developed there, we do need to transfer the land, sell the land to Ms. Patak so that she can proceed with her development applications. Through that process, there would be further public meetings, there would be further opportunity to have comments from the public come forward specifically about the development. During those processes, we would also have the application circulated to various commenting agencies who would comment on things like setback requirements, drainage, and if there are any environmental concerns there in relation to protected species or wildlife through the environmental impact study, which I did mention in the report. So given that at this time, I am recommending that council proceed with the sale to Ms. Patak, conditional on a first right of refusal to be registered on title, so that if the development applications do not proceed, the township would have the opportunity to purchase the land back at the same price. And then council could explore further if they wanted to offer that road allowance to any other abutting landowners. I do also note that the requests that we have received from other abutting landowners, they are not all impacted by this particular sale. So there may still be an opportunity for council to offer some of those parcels that are not connected to this request to sale to the other abutting landowners as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, so questions? To the clerk? Councilor Durston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Julie, would there be any cost to the right of refusal? So to the township, so if everything doesn't go through, then we have the right to buy that back, or is it?
So
How does that work?
So we did do something similar to this in relation to the Canfield and Alla road allowances in Beachville. This was abutting the proposed Vine Street subdivision. So the condition would be that we have a first right of refusal to buy it back for the same price if the development applications do not proceed.
Thank you, David. Would there be any cost to legal fees or anything there?
Usually anytime we are selling a road allowance, the purchaser pays all of the township surveying and legal costs.
But for us to take it back, would there be a cost, we think?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, oh, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Becker.
Just remind me, how many houses are being built, Mr. Bell, is it two?
Two. That's the proposal so far.
Yeah, there's no, and I just want to clarify though, there's no active application at this point, but in order to facilitate the applications to be made, this parcel has to be out of the township's name and into Ms. Patak's name to make the applications.
Councilor Gillis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the clerk's proposal is the correct way to go about it. As was noted, obviously, nothing can be proposed until the road allowance is in that person's name to bring something forward. That doesn't mean that something will happen or can happen. It just it moves something along that planning can actually move forward with proposals, see what's gonna happen. So they can talk about what's gonna happen with site plan, they can talk about drainage and other issues. Those are the concerns that were brought up by the residents. And what will be addressed about them when something is proposed on that location. Obviously, this doesn't mean that we obviously approve what's gonna happen here, but at least gives an opportunity for planning to move forward to propose what's gonna happen. That way, the public and council can talk about it again at a later time.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Yep.
I struggle a little bit with this one. I understand the application. And the ability to be able to build a couple of lots and build on a couple of lots as a result at the same time. I also understand the argument of those that have either maintained the lands for a certain amount of time. Or have expressed previous interest in purchasing the same properties. And I struggle with what's the fair thing to do in that situation. I understand that not all of the road allowance is gonna be taken up by this application. And so there might be still some opportunity there for sale to neighboring properties, but in particular, the parts that are where there's been more than one interest indicated on that particular, the part that leads up to Raglan Street itself. I struggle with what's the right thing to do here.
Laurel, do you want to comment on that? What part of this property would be needed for any or all of it for the potential development?
I will pull up the. And just to reiterate what Julie said, there is no application in the moment. The owner, the abutting property has submitted a draft. Concept. I'll just go for them. Has submitted a draft concept, and it appears that I would say 65 to 70% of the Henrietta Street allowance would be required to provide frontage onto Raglan and provide driveway for the two lots that would be off of that new allowance. I believe there's still some that is not required, but I would ask Ms. Patak to confirm that, and I'll see if I can pull it up on my computer.
So do they, I think Councilor Yip was asking, and correct me if I'm wrong there, does he need the full width of the 60?
Oh, I'm sorry, the full width, I'm sorry.
Rather than the full depth of it?
Yes, the full width would be required.
Okay.
Because we do require a minimum frontage onto Raglan Street, and because it will be two, in effect, two access ways to two separate lots. We wouldn't support minimizing that width beyond a certain amount.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Webb.
Through you, Mayor, kind of agree with Councilor Yip. I just struggle with this when someone else has asked. And they just said no, and then 2 years later, I don't know what the time frame has passed. Another party comes in and asks and say, yes, you can. I struggle with that and said no to one person and not the other person. I think with me, I would say offer all the budding landowners the option to purchase part of the road allowance that abuts their property, but you're probably not gonna get it, then you won't get any development. And I see from the development side why you were doing this, but I just don't think it's. I struggle, I don't think it's right.
Other comments?
I agree with Councilor Webb. Yeah, I see a fairness issue here. It bothers me. And I worry about potential problems. I realize you'll deal with those problems through the planning process. But I'm very concerned about this.
Councilor Thurston.
In response to the last couple of comments, I would like to follow the staff recommendation.
And Councilor Yip, maybe you want?
And do we know, I assume we do, what the full width of that property is? And the reason I ask is because I can think of at least a couple of locations within the township where we have several properties that use one communal driveway. And I'm just wondering why that couldn't be approached in this instance as well.
Go ahead, Julie.
So the total width is about 10 meters. I do have the concept drawing, so I just wanted to again clarify, this has not been submitted. So it is not an active application, but it was submitted with the request to illustrate what this could potentially look like. So what may be proposed is severing two parcels. The township's road allowance is this part here. There would be a proposed 10-meter frontage for lot 1, 10-meter frontage for lot 2, but the entire width would be required all the way back to about the third property down onto Oxford Street.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, now, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, now.
Okay, so looking back in the minutes, from the previous proposal a few years ago of individual property owner being interested in purchasing the property, the road allowance, at that time, council was saying that would eliminate any future potential development on this site. So once the road allowance was gone, that was the end of development opportunity. So this application coming forward actually does offer some potential development opportunity for that property in regard to that road allowance. So that's just a little bit for the history, because I did go back and have a look at it. The council, the reason the council turned down it last time was it would eliminate any future potential for development.
Anyone else? That was my understanding, or my recollection was that the council felt that the highest and best use of the property was potentially to develop should the property, should the landowner there want to develop a couple lots, the highest and best use, therefore you couldn't sell them at that time, so. So I would agree completely with what you said. Doesn't mean right or wrong, it means that was the thought of council at the time. Any further questions or comments, Councilor?
So then I understand from the report, then just to clarify, that should any development proposal come forward, that either site plan or environmental assessment would take care of any potential runoff, drainage, septic seepage, well issues, any of those sorts of things would all be covered up prior to any development happening.
Yes, so any development would require a site plan, it would require lot grading and drainage plan. There'd be required setbacks in relation to zoning that would need to be maintained for any development on the parcels. And then because there has been identified to be some significant valley lands in that area, valley lands and woodlands in that area, they are required to do an environmental impact study, and that would address concerns that were raised in relation to endangered species as well as wildlife.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilor White?
Is there a time frame that if we were to proceed with this, the property owner has to do something with a certain time frame? Because sometimes these things happen and then there's no work done, they just sit on it. Like if she maintains, it gets this road allowance, it just sits on it. Is the road allowance gonna be maintained like it was before? Will it be a weed issue or whatever? Is there a time frame? I mean, it's hard to put a time frame on something. I just don't like the fact that give her the road allowance and then they just sit on it and do nothing.
I think that a time frame is something we would consider as part of this, if council decides that they would like to proceed. My understanding is that Mr. Hack would like to proceed with consent applications should this go through, and I think that would happen relatively quickly within this year, but Mr. Hack is here, she can maybe speak to that.
Go ahead. Zach, if you want to comment?
I'm just waiting to get approval from you, and then everything goes to county.
Well, that's fine. I just, there have been times in the past, people have gotten acquired properties and nothing's done.
No.
And, you know, and that's frustrating. So,
or get zone changes done and then don't proceed and
Yeah.
simply swap or, sell land or whatever.
Yeah.
Other questions, Councilor?
Mr. Mayor, the resident of 11 Ragland has maintained this property for some time as part of his own. Obviously, if this sale goes through, there would be no incentive to do that anymore. So is there any stipulation that the new owners would have to maintain to the current level of maintenance until such time as development would happen?
I would assume property standard steps in, but.
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, the township's clean yards bylaw would step in terms of cutting the grass and maintaining that parcel of land.
Okay, any other questions or comments? One question I had, Julie, we can maybe help with this, first right of refusal, is that time limited? Can it go on for 100 years?
Well, we could specify at a certain time within the agreement of purchase and sale, certain.
So if there was a timeframe installed in the agreement of development, that same timeframe could be installed in the right of refusal. So if you said, okay, for example, 3 years, or 2 years until the site's developed, and then set a date, what that is, and you could use that same timeframe, and we'll get a legal opinion on this, but for the right of refusal. So that there's a coordination between those two timeframes.
So the concern I have about that would be, what if this was divided into 2 lots? And one lot is sold immediately, but the other takes a couple or 3 or 5 years or whatever to be able to sell. We're then stuck with kind of a half of right of refusal. And so I would say it's all or none, but that actually might not be applicable. If I have 2 separate lots on 2 separate deeds, I'm not sure you can do a right of refusal unless you did it separate.
So what I would suggest is that if they're saleable lots, the right of refusal piece is over. Because they're now different entities. They're registered
Right.
lots.
Once
and
the
sold.
consent is done,
Right, and the zoning is in place and they're prepared for sale. Then that's where the
Right.
right of refusal for them.
okay. Any other questions? Councilor Gillis.
Well, I think that if this moves forward to planning, that puts some emphasis off of us too, at the same fact that, you know, if they do the environmental concern and have issues, or they do drainage, they do a whole bunch of other things, they may say it's not feasible for 2 lots, or they may say the setbacks are too great, or there's other issues that can be identified. So there's no guarantee that anything may happen there at all. It's just the fact that that property has to be within that attached thing to move this forward to see if it can happen. And see what zoning and planning.
Any other discussion, Councilor?
Given the topography of the area, would site plan cover up any kind of slope stability structures necessary for, once that roadway is developed?
My understanding is they have to have an engineered drainage plan for the development, and that would include that if it was required.
Okay, because I'm just thinking there's significant, by the time you grade the roadway, there's gonna be a significant wall on one side of it at least, that would have to be constructed in order to impact the surrounding property.
Potentially.
Any other questions from council? Any further staff advice? No? Do we have any, we have a motion? The recommendation is there by staff. Councilor Garrison.
I'd like to move that we proceed with the sale of the subject property and further apply the condition of sale, the first right of refusal. And also, let me see here. The cost being to the potential.
Have a mover, do we have a second by Gillis? You want to give the motion and
Yes, I
the
would.
recommendation? So just make sure this is your motion. Result of Council Township Civil Authority report sale 2025 follow-up report. Post sale of a portion of Henrietta Street road allowance as information. And further, the council authorizes staff to proceed with the sale of the subject lands, piece of land at a purchase price of $2.21 per square foot, subject to final confirmation by survey and on condition that land is to be consolidated to 31 Wagner Street. And further, that as a condition of sale, a first rate of refusal in favor of the township be registered on title, such that in the event of the applicant's future consent and rezoning applications are not approved and or the proposed development is not proceed, the township shall have first opportunity to repurchase subject lands at the same price, and further, that the purchase be responsible for all associated legal, surveying, and registration costs related to the transaction. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Favor? Opposed, okay, sorry. Thank you, that's passed. So, Teresa, I'll leave that with you and, Julie to figure out, so. The next one is, CL 26. And chicken bylaw.
So this is, again, a follow-up report from council. We did consider this last time, in the fall of 2024. At that time, we were waiting to see what the city of Woodstock was going to implement in relation to the keeping of chickens within residential zones. So I have outlined that within the staff report. We are expecting that we're going to receive some more requests in relation to the keeping of chickens. We have heard from a few people within the township, and I think some of those will be coming forward at our next meeting. It is something that we're starting to hear more about. I do note in this report and previous council discussions that we did talk about amending the bylaw to allow chickens with certain conditions in place. However, I do think that for now, and given the number of requests that we're receiving, it would be better to keep this as an exemption process. It does allow for there to be some public consultation and engagement. We do circulate these requests to abutting landowners for their comments. And I think that that's a part of it that when it comes to keeping chickens, we should continue. Happy to hear council's thoughts on that. As mentioned, I have outlined specifically what the city of Woodstock's conditions are. And then I have also recommended what I propose the township's conditions of keeping chickens in residential areas be going forward, should we continue to receive these requests. I have included some of what the city of Woodstock has in relation to chicken coops and enclosures not being permitted in the front yard, and certain setbacks from property lines as well as other residential neighboring dwellings. And also just ensuring that the coops are completely enclosed so that any chickens can't escape and they can't mingle with any wild fowl. While I have outlined these conditions, I do also want to recognize that council may consider these and change them on a case-by-case basis, based on requests that come forward, based on comments that we've received from neighboring properties when we receive these requests, as well as just any site-specific conditions that may be in place or various sizes of parcels of land that may come forward. I think that's really all I wanted to highlight right now. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, questions, comments from council? Councilor Becker.
I don't know what the life of a chicken is, the laying life, I think it's 18 months, isn't that?
It depends what kind, but possible.
This business of they having come back to council every time they want to replace their hens. I don't know how practical that is. So they would have to go through this process every time they replenish their flock.
So
Going to.
yeah, that is what we discussed previously, and those are conditions that we put in place on other exemptions that council has granted, with the idea behind that being, we really don't want to have chickens in residential zones. So we were allowing some of these on a temporary basis, and then when the chickens were gone, they didn't have them anymore. But we did think that yes, if they wanted to have more chickens or if they wanted to replace that chicken, they would come back and do that process again, and we could circulate landowners. At this point, that it hasn't been too much in terms of administration. We're not receiving a lot of these requests, and we're not receiving requests for people to replace chickens. That could change in the future. And we may need to look at this again in the future, depending on how many requests we get.
But yes, that is a condition that we've kept in place since we started moving into that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually wondered about that condition when we put it in other cases. I think it does create some work, and that's for sure. Would every case have to come to council the way it's written? It would.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only point that I objected to.
Other comments, questions? Councillor Yeo, then Councillor Gordon.
I had that same concern highlighted. In general, I am not in favor of backyard clocks, period. I do appreciate the fact that we've got a restriction in there or a requirement that they be housed such a way to prevent access to wildfowl at all, because avian influenza is a big concern in the poultry industry. We've had several cases right locally here in the past 6 months, and so continues to be an issue. I wonder if there's any way, because we've had a lot of these proposals come forward in the last 2 to 3 years. Is there any way that some of these provisions can be made retroactive such that we can send bylaw enforcement out and advise previous applicants of the new requirements and that they be required to meet those same standards? I'm not sure if that's legal, feasible, possible. But I would very much like to see all backyard flocks be housed in a way that prevents access to wildfowl.
So would that not happen as they reapply, the new rules, new conditions would apply? And then, so my 6 chickens died, they've aged out. Too bad, under the new rules, you gotta have a roof on your, or you have to have a covering over your, I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yeah, and through your mayor, we did actually include that as a condition for the ones that were granted last year, that they need to be fully enclosed so that they can't escape and can't mingle with wildfowl. But I don't see why we couldn't, you know, for those that have received an exemption, just letting them know that we have updated our process a little bit and we changed what our conditions are and advise them of that, we can do that.
Other questions? Councillor Booker, you're next.
Yeah, just as a mental note, is it just for rural settlements or is it for all rural residential properties? Because I know there's a few outside of it and the chickens are running all over the place. And so is that on, you wait for a complaint? That, and then send the bylaw officer out, or as he says, does he patrol, and if he sees them, he pulls in and reads them the riot act?
So currently, we are complaint based, so we need to receive a complaint that there are chickens before we send bylaw enforcement out to go and talk to them about this process and coming forward and asking for an exemption. And it applies to any property that is zoned residential. So one of the reasons that I'm recommending we keep our current process and the bylaw exemption request process is because it may be something that we want to consider on a case by case basis, depending on the size of the parcel, depending on where it's located. You know, we're starting to receive requests right in Sweetburg. Haven't received any in Mount Elgin yet. Most of the requests that we've received so far are residentially zoned properties, but they are outside of our settlement areas and outside of the rural clusters. But if that changes, then that neighbors may have more to say about it, is what I'm suspecting.
Councillor Way, I think you were next, and then Councillor.
Yeah, through the mayor, I kind of agree with Councillor Gibbon. I think they need to be out in the country, not in the village. I've always been that train of thought. And kind of backlining on what Councillor Rudner said. I know a few properties of chickens there, I've seen them in the ditches, and I thought, there's no fence on these properties. Is that property owner, have they ever come to the township and asked if they can keep chickens? I don't know. But they're running pretty willing.
Well, there's one less. I saw it get hit.
Well, but I just think we obviously know the people that have come and asked. What about the people that have never asked to have chickens and they seem to be having no rules, like the chickens they're everywhere.
My initial thought is it might open up a larger discussion just about the keeping of chickens in general, which I'd be a little bit concerned about with us getting into in terms of enforcement and our ability to enforce that. And we have to check if they're zoned agricultural, then these rules don't apply and they are allowed to keep they can keep some chickens, right? This is strictly just residentially zoned properties. And I do know that we're the only rural municipality within Oxford that is providing these exemptions. My understanding is currently, no other rural municipality within Oxford County is allowing any chickens in residential zones.
Mario,
And the life expectancy of a backyard chicken is higher than your regular chicken. My daughter has backyard chickens that are 8 years old.
Wait.
Yeah.
And still producing eggs?
Not as much.
are they in wheelchairs and? Okay, Councilor, yeah, sorry.
Just for clarification, we have had one application in the village of Mount Elgin that's immediately north of the ball field.
So, recommendation of staff is to more or less, keep the same situation as now. And, use a new set of conditions for anybody that, I'm just trying to summarize this, as they come forward.
That's right.
Okay, so Councilor Gillis.
I would move the staff's recommendation at this time.
Okay, moved by Gillis, seconded by Thurston. Council Fiscal Talking Street for CL 26/2025. Follow up, keeping chickens in residential zones is information and further the council provide direction to staff regarding continuation of the current process for considering bylaw exemption requests for keeping of chickens in residential zone on a case-by-case basis and further the council confirm whether the recommended conditions outlined in this report should be applied to all future approved exemption requirements. So, any discussion? I want to go back then, if we can, for just a minute to Councilor Pickard's comment about what's the useful lifetime of the chicken, and whether I'm in favor or not of the chickens. In general, I'm not in favor of having a rule that creates unnecessary bureaucracy for no advantage. And the reason I say that is because one of the conditions is if the chicken causes trouble, it's gone. And that's, I think, the last condition. So I think that's a case of, if we're having a problem, we can get rid of the chickens. If we're not, is there a need for somebody to come back every year or every other year or whatever to get the exemption? And it's a $75 charge. So I guess I'm just wondering, council's expectations or whatever of that. I think we already had kind of an end if we want, so Councilor, yeah.
Well, it just seems to me that if you have an approved facility for one flock, it should still be approved in the next go around. And so long as you don't have neighbors complaining about the situation, then it seems to me that probably it's unnecessary, like, additional burden to the property owner to have to reapply each time if we're gonna do it. And I get the value of having a backyard block. I mean, the principle is good. I mean, it teaches responsibility to young kids, or it just, it's an enhancement of the the rural way of life for some folks that wouldn't have access to it otherwise. I get that. But if you're gonna keep livestock, you're gonna have dead stock. It's back to life. And so what do you do with the dead birds? You gotta launch them into the nearest farm field, or what happens to that side of it as well? I think there's more issues than.
Couldn't agree more. So, other comments, I'm just wondering if we want to change that condition. And maybe there's a condition on how do you dispose of dead chickens, what's the appropriate model of disposing?
Well, I know what I do, but that's not feasible on a 6 chicken basis. So I don't know what the answer is.
Well,
So if you have, I'm not saying it has to be annual and you come back, but if you have the renewal process, that will help if the rules change. Because if you don't have that system in place where you have to come back and ask for permission, no matter what, how long it is. You have, and I don't mean to say this with any comedy involved. But in essence, you have a grandfathered chicken, okay? So if the chicken is there, the chicken will always be there, if you know what I mean, but like just as a. So if there is time frame,
Go through.
Just further that. Well, first of all, in relation to the motion, I do need confirmation just about the conditions that council is agreeable to moving forward. But also when it comes to no chicken may be replaced at the end of its useful life. What if that was changed to say, if you are looking to increase the maximum number of permitted chickens, then you have to come back. So if we have a maximum of 6, well, if someone has 4 and they want to increase it, would we want them to come back and take out the condition that they come back every time they are replacing the chicken?
Council Burger.
I don't think so, Julie, that's just my opinion on that. The thing is, these people that have chickens, they're gonna spend up to $1,500 on these coops. I seen a really nice one back there in Woodstock. Wow. And it's really well done. So with that kind of investment, this fellow is gonna replace his chickens. It's automatic. So I think most of the ones we're dealing with, this just wasn't a 2-year deal. They're planning on keeping chickens. So I just see this as being, that's all I'm saying. I think we stick with 6 chickens, we agreed on that, that's fine. If they have 4 and want to go to 6, that's fine, it's not our business. But you want the work to go through this every time. Have them come back every 3 years, notify the neighbors. I struggle with that. Strikes me as being a lot of work there. You don't have to do. Because they are gonna renew. They didn't spend $1,500 on a really nice food. Buying chickens, all this. Just quit, once the chickens start. We should be more concerned about what we're gonna do with 6 chickens when they all get there. What is the process to get rid of dead chickens? That's.
Okay, other comments? Council Gillis.
Well, I would agree with Councilor Pickard that honestly, if we're gonna go with use bylaw as an example that we're complaint based. If somebody's come forward and we appreciate them actually coming forward and telling us and being able to follow these rules. If we're following the rules and doing as our little bylaw says, like, what's to say they can't just go in as long as there hasn't been a problem? We've gone through this process and no trouble has come out of it. I see no reason why for them to have to come back. It's extra money. As much as it doesn't take a whole lot of staff time, it is staff time, it is another agenda item. Unless there's a problem, I don't foresee them coming back. And I think that as far as checking in on them, you could put something in there that obviously we have the ones registered that we know that we give permission to before. You could send bylaw out just to say hi every couple of years, say, hey, if we've changed the restriction. So I just saw a bylaw and say, hey, you're one of the people that register here, just letting you know this new restriction, please. And if they update, great. If they don't, well, we can take away the tree.
Other comments? Council,
Seems to me that the $75 charge for exemption to the bylaw on an annual or biannual basis, that seems to be a little bit punitive as well.
I just want to reiterate that this condition was with the understanding that when we talked about this previously, they would eventually get to a place of not having chickens. But if we are kind of changing our approach and saying, well, we will grant these, then I agree that that condition isn't really necessary. And I included that based on, we only received so far 2 or 3 requests a year. That could change. And also thinking that it would be, they would have the chickens for longer than 1 or 2 years, but if they're replacing them every 1 or 2 years, then I would agree, it doesn't make sense for them to have to come back every time they do.
So direction going forward would be, I guess, a couple of questions on here. What about the end of life chickens? And the second one would be, and how do you dispose of end of life chickens? That, do you want to take this back or do you just want to take that as direction? That the conditions seem fine, except the question around end of life. And useful life.
I can take that as direction and we can look into it the next time a request comes forward in terms of disposing that chicken.
So I would caution us that I think we might want to figure out the disposal and or have some kind of requirement there before we grant more or grant more exemptions. I think that is it's awful easy to drive down the side road and pitch them out the window, and then all of a sudden we've got another problem, so. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I just wonder if we could add an additional condition that, to receive an exemption, you have to provide a plan of disposal for end of life birds. Because I'm guessing if you're keeping them for 8 years, you're not gonna eat them at the end of it.
How do you roast a chicken that old? Carefully. Okay. Anything further on this? Do we have a motion then to see the report and
We're into motion on the floor.
what was the motion?
So. the
Okay.
motion- So the motion is to provide direction to staff to continue the current process of granting bylaw exemption requests for keeping of chickens in a residential zone on a case by case basis. And then confirming the conditions to be imposed as requests come forward, which I understand is all of the conditions outlined in the report with the exception of no chicken may be replaced at the end of its useful life without further request.
Did you move or second?
Yes, moved by Councilor Gillis and.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we'll have break for lunch. So.
We have chickens.
I mean,